It'll go live eventually, and then all of them will see us saying it'll go live. Alrighty. Okay, I think we're live now. Yep.
I don't even think this hat fits, but we're going with Scuderia Ferrari tonight.
No offense, dude, but you look like Mario.
It's a Mario.
I really hope that's the first thing they saw when we went live.
Oh, we're live now?
Yeah.
It's a time to plumb the something. That people were asking me for a hat, so I figured I'd grab one real quick, and I got a really tiny little. It's actually a Puma hat, but it's a Scuderia Ferrari hat. So there you go, guys. There's your hat meme, and now I'm gonna have bad hair the rest of the time because I would rather have that than a tiny hat.
I just got Uncle Ira. So
there we go. I got the '96 Indy 500.
Nice.
What a great race that was. At least if you're a Buddy Lazier fan.
I was wondering if you were gonna notice the car I have next to me.
That's
here.
Mario's, isn't it?
Yes, and it is also signed.
Oh hell yeah! I've got actually. I think it's in the closet behind me, but I don't want to get it out right now. Mario Andretti's Pixar car, signed by Mario, and I got it signed by him in person, which was really cool. And I asked him, I was like, "Did you actually have fun making that?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Actually, yeah." And that's my Mario Andretti story. He signed my Disney car, and told me he liked working on the movie.
So that one. There's a store, excuse me. There's a store in my town called the Beer Gear Store, and all it does is just sell racing stuff, NASCAR, some IndyCar, some F1, but mostly NASCAR. But I was looking through like their autograph shelf, and there was stuff from Cale Yarborough, there was stuff from David Pearson, Petty, and I'm like, that's cool. And then I like saw that one, and I'm like, how much is that? And the lady like picks it up. She goes, "Oh, it's like 180, but I'll give it to you for 80." And I'm like, yes, take my money.
And those are the University of Racing cars, right? I mean, those run like $200 each usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I mean, it's top of the line. But yeah, she's like, yeah, just give 80. It's fine. No one's even asked about it yet. And I'm like, what?
You're definitely not in an IndyCar town.
I'm like, deal. Go for it, man. All right, just letting people roll in here. I say we got a super chat. Adam Smith asked for the Canadian 279. Says, "What's the best form of potatoes?" Is there a running joke I don't know?
That's not my joke. Yeah, I don't talk about potatoes all that much, so I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from. I mean, I'll answer the question. I think it's. I would probably say, French fries.
I always go mashed, but I'm.
Ooh, mashed potatoes.
No, did you?
I like garlic mashed potatoes. Those that's the strat right there.
Yeah. Did you see that Carnation? I think I know where it's from actually. Now that I think about it, it was about a year and a half ago, and it was back when Dale Jr. actually answered his questions on his Ask Junior segment. And Carnation left one and said, "Do you like potatoes?" And he's like, "What?"
I do remember that. I do remember that.
I'm sitting here. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm sitting there waiting for one of my classes to start, and I'm laughing my ass off. And people are like, what? And I'm like, this kid got a chance to ask my hero a question. And me, I have a million questions I'd think. And this man asks, "Do you like potatoes?" And I'm just, respect. I mean, just full-blown respect.
I'm surprised Dale Jr. doesn't know who Carnation is. He seems to be the thing I'm starting to notice about Dale Jr. is I'm pretty sure he pays attention to what happens here on YouTube.
He does.
At least a little. He's maybe not as ingrained as a lot of us are, but he definitely pays attention because he responded directly to somebody the other day saying he should run NASCAR. He's like, "Shit, I'm in." It's like,
dude, he watched I did a video on back in the day. Like 2 days ago.
Wow.
And he liked the tweet, and I'm like, and it literally had the link there, and he was like one of the first people to like the tweets, and I'm like, that's
yeah.
odd. Like, people were tagging him nonstop, don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, that made my day. So,
right.
Dale, if you're watching, come on.
What a small, this is the thing that I could never, ever have thought about, when, like, say, let's go back to 2004 and you're watching Talladega and Dale Jr.'s leading. Could you have ever thought that we live in a world where we are in some ways so close through social media to these people that we can not only get their attention, but they can interact with us. And, you know, it's just, it's such a strange new world to be in. And I just think about those things. I mean, you can still you can tweet Mario Andretti right now and he might respond to you.
Yeah.
You never know, you know?
Well, and the weirdest one is when like these people follow you. So like I was watching the race on Sunday, and like my phone rings up, and I'm just like, you know, I have it set that it doesn't really show me when people follow too much, just because on race day I get like, you know, a 50 boost like every race day, so
Right.
it'll always be going off. And so like when it does that, it's like it's somebody with a following, and I look at my phone and it says Jeremy Mayfield has followed you on Twitter, and I'm like, hell yeah! And then I'm like,
Wow.
man, I retract everything I said before I learned that it was all fake.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that's the other thing is like, man, like you have to like I'm glad I learned this early on is you have to be careful about what you say about people because they nowadays, especially and the further we get down the road, they will hear it. They will
Yeah.
hear it. So you have to be careful.
Like, so I was able to be in some of the press conferences in the last few weeks, like after the Cup race, and then the one with Noah Gragson where he kept doing all the hot takes.
Oh, that was
And
awesome.
the Brad Keselowski one that has since changed all the rules for Zoom calls for NASCAR drivers now. And so like I'm sitting in there, and he go and like Noah's talking about stuff, and he goes, you know, like Iceberg said in his video, and I'm like, what? and it wasn't like it was a small one either, because there was like everybody, like, you know, Gluck was
Right.
in there, Jenna Fryer, you know, I'm just like,
Oh,
wait,
Gregson. I mean, that interview he gave after the wreck with David Starr. That honestly, that was a top 10 of all time as far as I'm concerned. That was just amazing. So he had all the attention on you, and he name drops you in the press conference.
he name dropped me and Eric Estepp.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's like, yeah, I talked to. He said I talked to Eric Epps. That's what he calls him. He goes, I talked to Eric Epps about when he like called me out in the Whataburger tweet, and I thought it was funny. And I'm just like, wait, huh? And then he goes, yeah, and like Iceberg said in his video, and I'm like, wait, that's two people. Like, wait, that's me. And I'm sitting here trying to keep a straight face because it's like my first time doing this, and I'm trying to just, you know, act professional.
Your first virtual press conference, and the driver's talking about your videos. Yeah, wow.
I'm just like, I flinched. I flinched for a minute, and I'm just like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to do that. Real quick, another super chat here for $5 from Nicholas Gray. Says speedwaycharity.org, Bristol. Oh, you can purchase some Bristol dirt.
Really? That's interesting.
Oh my god. Well,
I know we're going to talk about that race later, but
We
man, I've got some thoughts on that.
I don't know what to think about that one, but yeah, we'll get to that one later on. The big one I want to start off with is just Indy 500, especially with the COVID stuff. Like, I have been very bullish the whole time on getting people back. I think I put a video out like in the middle of May that we needed people at the track when NASCAR came back.
Wow, that was edgy.
Oh yeah. No, I made
that was a ballsy decision there.
I made that one, and then like 2 weeks later, I made one defending Bubba Wallace right before the noose gate.
Oh, you pissed both sides of the aisle off there,
and then
with two videos.
And then I defended Kyle Larson the very next video. I was like, screw it, we're going for it, man.
Just might as well, right? At that point, why not? Just scorched earth.
Yeah, but you know more about the IndyCar front with this. I'm just sort of trying to get into it. So you should probably take off, you know, from here where we go with this part, because I know a bit of it from the outsider perspective. I see like the media trying to spin it, but
Right.
I don't
Right.
know the ins and outs of IndyCar and Indianapolis like that.
So essentially, I mean, do you just want me to kind of go through the whole process of last year? Because I mean, that last year was really odd for a lot of reasons. Everything, obviously, we know the pandemic. In fact, we're on pandemic anniversary. I don't know if we've even mentioned that yet, but like literally, like last year, I was in a St. Petersburg hotel room hoping they don't shut the freaking airports down.
I remember that because I was with Sloppy Joe and Darian because we were going to go to the
Right.
Atlanta race, and so we were at a gym working out, and I was actually running on the treadmill, listening to your update from the track or like from the hotel or something like that. I can't remember where you were at, but I was listening to your update, and then right after that, I saw on Twitter, so I might be stuck here.
Oh yeah, I was. I mean, because we didn't know. I mean,
Hmm.
that was what was so. I try to really think about this because it kind of puts what we're kind of seeing now into perspective. If you can, I mean, even people who are watching this now, like put yourself back into that March, that early March kind of uncertainty, fear. We didn't know what this virus was going to be like, or what kind of an impact it was going to have, and certainly that played into what we saw with the Indy 500. Now, obviously, we know the traditional May 23rd, I think it was May 23rd date that it was supposed to go off on got postponed, specifically because Roger Penske was like, well, two reasons. Number one was Indiana hadn't lifted their restrictions yet. They actually did that like a couple of days, and we were all actually going to go to that race a couple of days before the
Hmm.
Brickyard 400, and it turned out that didn't end up happening the way we all thought it was going
Yeah.
to. But um, the uh, the Indy 500 got delayed because of the restrictions, and then just a couple of weeks later, and this was probably Roger Penske's big mistake on a lot of fronts, declared that the Indy 500 is going to run with fans or it's not going to run at all. And I think they announced around the same time, or maybe just a bit before, that it was going to be at a reduced 50% capacity, which
Hmm.
at that time
It's huge.
sounds like a big reduction, but really that was about how many tickets they'd actually sold
Yeah.
at that time. In fact, they were right before the pandemic. I mean, they were steaming along selling tickets, but as soon as the shutdown happened, which naturally you would think because there was so much uncertainty, so we go through the summer and the Speedway is putting together their plan for fans because, as we know, while there were NASCAR races, IndyCar races, I'm trying to think of other kind of major sports that had fans. I
Hmm.
think maybe soccer started to have fans as well, kind of in the summer. We know that the NBA did not. They were kind of the major other side of the coin versus auto racing, where they locked down really hard. They went to a bubble to finish the NBA playoffs. Um, so we start getting down the line. There is an 80-page safety document published by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They reduced the capacity again to 25%. That plan was actually approved by the Marion County Health Department, which is the county that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway um, is located in Indiana. Then it comes out in the Indianapolis Star that IU Health, who is, if you're a NASCAR fan, Advent Health is the equivalent for the Daytona International Speedway, came out and said, we think this is a terrible idea. IMS didn't consult with us before releasing this. We don't think it should happen. And that started off that kick. Really, it was Roger declaring that fans were going to be there, or the race was going to get shut down, really kind of started kicking off some of this kind of back and forth. But that was really kind of the rallying cry for the other side, the side that, and I'm not saying, I don't mean to vilify these people in any way who felt that Indy should not have fans, because I genuinely believe 99.99% of them thought it was the right decision.
Yeah,
But
because even going into August, it was still wasn't clear how deadly or not deadly it was to the extent we know now. Like now, it's I mean, I've family that works in the healthcare industry and in hospitals and in the ER, and they're like at the start of the pandemic, it basically was a death sentence if you went to the ER with COVID. Like you had a pretty damn bad chance. Whereas like now, they still at risk people have problems, but it's nowhere near. They've learned how to treat it, I guess.
right.
So I completely understand why. I mean, I was still kind of like, come on, this place is ginormous. This place holds like 300,000 people. You tell me you can't put 30,000 in? That's
Right. And that was the big thing too. And I actually, what was crazy about this whole thing is I was in the Speedway a couple of weeks before they announced that the fans were not there for a go-kart race. And I want to be very careful with how I say this, but I saw a very high level IMS official who I know. And I was just walking by and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he starts talking to me about kind of what's happening. And unfortunately, I didn't really pick up on it. I was just more like, "Hey, thanks for putting up with this. I know it's kind of crazy that particularly I mentioned that the Indianapolis Star had gone after them pretty hard." And he said to me, just did not have a very positive attitude towards a lot of what was going on, and particularly the people who were taught because what happened really, and this is, none of this is totally confirmed. I want to just throw that out there. This is from things like I heard in this conversation or things that I've heard since then, is that the Speedway did send their stuff to IU Health, and essentially IU Health, for whatever reason, and I'm not really sure what, and again, I'm only getting one side of the story here. So it could be that, it could be that the Speedway is lying. I don't think that's what's happened, but they went to the media first. And I was surprised, and I still am surprised, that if there wasn't a common ground between the two parties, I was surprised that wasn't handled behind closed doors rather than the way it played out, soap opera drama in the media. I think that looked bad for all parties involved. And I think, I would hope that given the opportunity to do it over again, that they wouldn't do that. And I'm kind of hoping it doesn't happen this year. And as I've kind of talked about in 2 videos about this, we're beginning to really see a lot of data that is suggesting that fans at a socially distanced, even indoors, a socially distanced sporting event does not really lead to additional COVID cases. It's not something, especially like you mentioned, Jarrett, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I mean, that place, have you ever been there?
I have not. I've driven past it, but I have not actually been in it.
You really can't understand how big the place is until you've been there for like a practice. I mean, it really is almost like a mini city. You've got the really populated area where everybody kind of congregates in a normal year, by the way, with the garage and the Pagoda Plaza and all the merchandise tents. But you can walk down the back straightaway. You can go into turn 2, turn 1, outside of turn 1, turn 3. And it's such a different perspective. And you're so far. I mean, you could go to a practice day and there could be 20 to 30,000 people there. And you probably could pull off a way to not walk past 20 people in a day at the speedways. I mean, it's that big. So it was weird. It's just, the whole situation last year was very weird to me. And I don't really know. I know why in some ways it kind of got to the point that it did, but at the same time, there were some weird elements of last year and kind of the situation. I can't wait for the book to come out. I'm sure someone's going to write a book about it someday, because it'll be quite the mystery to kind of finally discover definitively what happened.
Yeah, and then, I mean, what I've kind of noticed with it is, you talked about the Indianapolis Star, I believe it was, that it had really went hard after him.
Right.
But it's like, and you've talked about this in some of your videos, like just the media in general seems to, like, auto racing in general, they're going after fans, but like the Indy 500 is like target number 1 on their board right now, it seems like.
I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think number 1, the Indy 500 optically, it's a event that has been promoted for a very long time, at least especially recently, though, for its entire history, really, it's always been the largest single day sporting event in the world. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's kind of come around, that great marketing has come around to bite them in the ass, because now you've got an event that is described by, and really it's described by the mainstream media as the biggest sporting event in the world. So when they hear Indy 500, the first thing they would think about is, oh my God, it's going to be a super spreader, because you're going to have 350,000 people. And I think some people, not all people, because I definitely think there's some people who are going in there with ill intentions, the Jalopnik article. but I think some people just kind of don't realize, because they haven't been there and they read all the marketing material or hear all the marketing material, that for some reason they think because the facility can hold 400,000 people, that means that 400,000 people are going to show up on race day and they won't be able to socially distance, which is just not true at a variety of reasons. I mean, even with the pandemic last year, voluntarily, you only had 25% that were going to go anyway. I mean, they didn't until they told everybody that they couldn't go. There was nobody's ticket that they had turned away. And I know for a fact at Daytona, I had spoken to one of my friends who had their ticket turned away. So that was a problem that even the Daytona 500 couldn't get around, probably because of the fact that really all the fans at Daytona are kind of congregated in one area. Unfortunately, in since Daytona Rising, it's less spread out than it used to be, so everybody's kind of in the same spot.
And we had something similar to that. A friend of mine in our group, and Danny is, I believe, if I'm remembering right, cousin-in-law, I want to say. She had a Daytona ticket since, I believe, June, and they're like, nope, you didn't renew at this point. So her and then Danny and Claudia had to like buy basically a table in the infield fan area that they're letting people in, and that's where they watched the race. Now I don't know what they changed in there, because I know when I was in there, it was like there you could see one little 800-foot strip of it and one like that. But I mean, they were serious about the amount of people they were having with that one. I don't see how the Indy 500 would be any different when it comes to that thing, especially when they did it, because it was what, the third or the second to last weekend of August, if I remember right. Because yeah.
August 23rd, I believe, was, or 24th, 23rd or 24th, somewhere around there.
Yeah, because I remember the big BS thing that kept getting thrown at us is it's gonna overlap with Dover, and I'm like, this is the Indy 500, people.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was the thing that hurt the Indy 500 TV rating, I think, the most. Was I don't know where NBC, because here was the other problem with NBC, is they told the Indy 500 you have to start later in the day, which I think would have meant that they would have, if they'd started the traditional noon,
Knew it was coming. Knew it was coming.
They would have overlapped with the Xfinity race. But to me, wouldn't you rather the Indy 500 overlap with an Xfinity race that's, let's be honest, not going to get a terrific TV rating on NBC Sports Network in August, rather than go head-to-head with a Cup Series race where ordinarily a really high Cup TV rating is about what the Indy 500 is. So you've got a lot of overlap between those two audiences. And I really didn't understand that move from NBC, to be honest, especially because they went on the air for the Indy 500 around noon anyway. It's like, do we really need 3 hours of pre-race for a race that has no fans? Because that was the other thing with the pre-race. God damn, that was depressing. It's just like,
because you can't avoid it. I mean, that's just that was the thing, like, just in general. It's the big detriment, I think, of racetracks, is with them being so huge, is that even, like, I've been saying this on the podcast about NASCAR. It's like, people are like, why are they taking seats out? What if people want them? And it's like, well, it looks better on TV to have a full 40,000 compared to like 40,000 and 100,000 stands. And so then you look at like Indianapolis. I remember watching it. My grandpa and I both were like, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't have the same, I guess the right word is magic, if there's any word to put on it. Like, that's just sort of... Oh, did you freeze up? Uh-oh, I think you froze up. Uh-oh, that's not good. Stand by, everybody. Let me see if I can get this right. Ah, crap. Hold on a moment.
I really need to wire my connection.
Yeah, because it just went black on my screen completely. Hold on. I know there's a way to do this because I accidentally minimized Zoom to try and figure this thing out. So let me
Okay.
fix. Yeah, it's just an OBS problem. For some reason, OBS just goes completely like white when this happens. So they can hear us talking right now, but for some reason, it's just not connecting right now. Let me see if I can reset this thing. So yeah, they can hear everything we're saying. So
Okay.
no,
Well,
because
that's good.
you stopped and you just had this look like
Well, what point did I get to? Where was I when the when the signal cut?
well, I think I was like talking about how the just it looked wrong basically at the. There we
Right.
go. We're back on. Okay. Yes. Um. All right. Hold. Yeah, because they can. I'm pretty sure they can hear us. Yeah. It went from black screen to white screen. But yeah, I was just talking about how it was just so odd watching that race. It didn't feel right. Like the I had said the magic of it was just not there. It was like the Daytona this year, as amazing as it was to be there, and they might have fudged the 30,000 number. I'm just not accusing, just saying that's a possibility for the 500 for Daytona. They might have a little. It still just didn't feel, it didn't have that same feeling as even 2020 did. Like before, like I know before the 2020 Daytona 500, like being there, like I know so much in the world has changed since then, and it's probably iffy to talk anything about that pre-race. But just between the hype behind it, the president being there, it was insane, dude. I mean, like it was the only time I've ever been in a garage area when Air Force One came by, where the entire garage went silent. I was standing with Adam Stern and Bob Pockrass, and we were like standing with some people from the money team, which was very kind of. I was looking around. I'm like, I do not belong here. Um, and so I'm like, and so we're talking all of a sudden, like we hear a few people, whoa, look at that. Everyone turns and just the entire garage went silent. And that's like when all the drivers scurried out of the drivers meeting to like not have to talk to the press. Um, but no, but going back to the original point, it didn't have that feel that it always does. And this is coming from a casual IndyCar fan. Like I'm not a diehard by any means, at least yet. Um, and it was bizarre. If that's the right word for it, it was just bizarre to look at.
Right. Yeah. That's the perfect word because there's so much. I mean, especially when it's full, you've got so much warmth and energy and humanity there. The racetrack totally changes when there's 300,000 people in there, and it will be weird. I mean, I've been to some Brickyard 400s, and not during the height of that event. It's probably, this year it's probably going to feel a little bit more like those Brickyards did. Though I will say I have a feeling that even though there may be a max of 150,000 people there, I think that's probably the number we would look at if we're really getting a good deal. I will guarantee you that whether it's 150,000 or 75,000, whatever it ends up being, they will make the noise that 350,000
Yeah.
people would make. There's going to be a lot. I mean, back up, I'm just saying this. Back home again in Indiana this year, it's going to hit different. It's going to hit different this year.
Are you gonna be there? Do you know yet, or is that
Oh,
still?
I'm going to be there.
Okay, good.
They're not. Well, oh, is that a no?
I no,
Are we getting into the Twitter drama? No,
no, I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't insinuating
Oh,
that.
okay.
But, no, I knew it was probably a dumb question, but I had to be sure because I didn't want to be like in the show. So like, yeah, you're gonna be there, and you're like, no, I'm not.
Oh, dude, I was about to have my 20th straight Indy 500. I had been going since 2002.
Damn.
So last year would have been, I think, 19. I think this year would have been 20.
Oof.
Oh well.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously a lesser event in every way, but that's how I was with Chicago before it got shut down. Like COVID,
Oh,
COVID, like that one, COVID in Illinois killed that one.
right.
But no, that because I had been going there since '07, so 2020 would have been our 14th year in a row, and it was just like throw it down the ground. It was like being a Vikings fan. I know
Wow.
I know the feeling. No, I was joking the other day. I was talking to actually yesterday. I was talking to a friend, and I was saying, yeah, in school, I'd always tell people that I loved pain, and they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a Cubs, Vikings, and Dale Jr. fan, so."
Oh
and
my Lord.
yeah, that was like in 2010, right after the championship too. So I'm like, just everything sucks. No, so kind of going fast forwarding though to this year, what's the big where did it really did it just start from August last year on into this year, or is it because I noticed it popped up, this stuff about fans being in the stands popped up on my feed and like on my radar around January, and it's just been growing ever since.
Well, it was always going to be um, an issue because, and I think I even mentioned this in the video, the first video, I think, was, ultimately, for one reason or another, Roger acquiesced to the pressure. So, right or wrong, there are going to be people who think now they can put pressure on Roger for everything. Because he I don't want to say bent to the mob because I don't think that's the right way to say it, but I mean he did bend and break on that issue that he was so strong or so strongly put forward, like we're going to have fans, we're not going to have this race, and he bent and broke on that. So naturally, especially because the pandemic is not over, there's still going to be people, maybe even more so emboldened this year. Though it hasn't happened yet, I will say I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, that the Jalopnik article really is the only one we've seen. Though, of course, the local Indiana press is still kind of focused on the Final Four tournament. So we're going to have to see. My understanding is that within the next 2 weeks, I literally got that information today. Within the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to have a pretty solid idea of what it's going to look like in May. So whatever number they announce, whether that's 25%, which would be around 75 to 80, or 50%, which I think is an outside possibility right now. I personally still am leaning towards 25%, but 50% would be around 150,000 people. And that number comes with quite a bit of sticker shock.
Yeah.
So if they do announce 150,000 people are going to be at the 500 this year, there are absolutely going to be articles written. There's absolutely going to be media backlash. Mm-hmm. And that's where the story really is going to be. Will the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and their partners be able to kind of withstand that pressure or not? And will that plan that they put forth this year, hopefully learning a little bit from last year, be the final plan right out of the gate? And that's the one that fans will be able to kind of abide by and realize, like, this is what it's going to take. I mean, I had seen a racer article that talked about potentially needing a Vax card to get in. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. It seemed like it was Mark Miles kind of talking in a hypothetical, but I posted it on my community tab because that I know for a fact, looking especially at the comments, that's a deterrent for a lot of people if they have to have a Vax card to get in. So that's going to be another, there's a lot of factors here that could happen or could be in the cards here to make that event happen with fans. That and as we found out, the Indy 500 seems to have different rules written for it than the Super Bowl or an NFL game or a NASCAR race or even an IndyCar race that isn't taking place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So who knows? It's definitely going to be a story, for better or for worse, that's going to be a huge one over the next couple of months.
Well, it actually fits right into with what I got right here. So today, I went on NBC's website, and they have this awesome graph. It's the United States, and they have it labeled like 0% to 17% for like fully vaccinated, and then how many have at least one dose, adding the one dose with the rest of them. And I was looking at the NASCAR ones just because that's more, where my channel leans.
Right.
And aside from Virginia and Wisconsin, Indiana is leading the way for states that have, NASCAR races. And I was looking, 11.4% of people from Indiana are fully vaccinated, and 18% have one dose. And we still haven't reached, like, basically after what Biden announced with May 1st is like the floodgates opening.
Right. And I have to say, full credit to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They are a Johnson & Johnson vaccine site. They opened their gates to, I think, pretty much everybody over the age of 50 recently. and I'm sure that that will probably continue at the facility at least for the next couple of weeks. We'll have to see. Like you said, Biden's talking quite a bit about the vaccine becoming available sooner rather than later to everybody. And at that point, to me, we're getting to the point where keeping things shut down, even if there's still some reasonable restrictions in there, I'm totally fine. Like I'm not, and I never have been one of the people who've been kind of going out there and saying, we got to have 100% for the Indy 500 this year. Like I get what's going on. Like I'm more than willing to be reasonable and accept the situation for what it is. But I can show you data, and the people who have come at me recently haven't been able to show me data that suggests that people sitting in an outdoor facility as large as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is going to really, at this point especially, create any more pandemic concerns, especially with those vaccinations ramping up. And the fact that, and hopefully this will help them, the fact that Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been so active in combating now the coronavirus, hopefully that lends them some good boy points in May.
Yeah, and that was actually something just in general. I was thinking sporting events. You could have more fans at sporting events if you did what Indianapolis Motor Speedway has done and make mass vaccination sites at them. I went to Nashville right after Christmas, and right near the Titans Stadium, they're doing that. They have like a full area where just people can just drive in like it's a damn McDonald's drive-through.
By the way, that's another IndyCar venue, the Titan Stadium. So.
I'll be real. I'm thinking about going to that one. I don't know yet because I need to, get closer to it. But I mean, and based on what time it starts too, I was like, man, I can watch the NASCAR race at Watkins Glen, like,
right,
and then drive down and watch the IndyCar race in Nashville. I'm like, that's perfect.
And I'll tell you about planning. If there's anything that 2020 taught me, is don't play. You can't plan very far out in advance during a pandemic. Holy smokes. Got burned a couple of times on that one.
Well, yeah, like you were saying earlier, we all planned to go to the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader in Indianapolis, and then
that was canceled at the last minute too.
I know, and that's what sucked is like because the whole time the people like that I know in NASCAR that were helping me out with it, they're like, oh yeah, it'll be, you might have to like stay in certain walking lanes or something, but you should be able to like have access, keep a mask on. I'm like, okay, cool. And then it's like the week of, as like we're all planning to get an Airbnb or something. It's like, yeah, so it's fans are canceled at it. Sorry. I'm like,
and everybody, I mean, NASCAR has been, I mean, more recently they've opened up quite a bit, but NASCAR was very, very, and to their credit, probably should be. Well, not with the practice and qualifying, but that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. They have been very conscious of the virus, and it's come at the expense of, kind of more independent media content creators like you and I being able to get access, at least in person, or things like sponsors. That's a big issue that NASCAR's having, is that sponsors aren't getting hot passes. And there have been some interesting ways that maybe some of the teams have tried to get around that, but it's definitely been it's been a weird time for. I will be very happy once we get all of this. I was just thinking or I'm just thinking right now is just like, how amazing did the world used to be where we could just if you had the right credentials, you could just walk right in the garage, walk right up to some star driver and be like, hey, how you doing? Can you sign this pen that I've touched? Hey, let's shake your hand. It's just like all these things.
I like looking back during 2020. I would look back. So Danny B does vlogs of like our race weekends all together and stuff. And it's really cool because it's like, that is always kind of archived there of where we were at that point. And I was watching the Daytona one, and with the president being there, they had everybody packed closely together in line so Secret Service could give us all special pat downs, have us lean over and cough the whole 9 yards. No, kidding about the last one. Just for people that would take it literally. And I remember walking up in the garage, and Corey LaJoie the day before had been crashed in the duels when we saw him, and Darren and I were like, hey, how you doing? I'm pissed. And we were able to just talk to somebody as they're pissed off or something. Or we're able to walk, we literally walked into a garage and just started talking with a few crew chiefs here or there. I was literally talking the Vikings and Cowboys with Bob Levine and the Cubs with Kurt Busch. And then I look at now and I'm just like, man, I didn't. I mean, I appreciated it, but there is. It's not even on the level it's gonna be the first time I get to go back in the track. Even
Right.
if I have to wear like a freaking gas mask, I'm gonna be like I'm gonna appreciate it so much more than before, just because it's like you don't know, like you literally you don't know if tomorrow another thing pops up and all
Don't
get shut
say
down.
that.
I know, knock on
Don't
wood that
say
it doesn't
that.
happen. But like oh man, I miss it. Like I because I was starting to get into the groove of it and like start getting connections, doing all the stuff that I wanted to do, and then that happened and I'm just like, it was like that. You know the movie Madagascar?
I can't remember. You're
So
gonna have to explain it to me
it's
a little
like,
bit.
well, it has like all these animals to try and get out of a museum, but there's these penguins that want to go to Antarctica, and
Oh, right, yeah.
they get there and they're just standing there and they're like, well, this sucks. That's how it felt. Like that's how it feels now, not being able to do that stuff. And I know, like, we probably the people that are watching right now that don't get the same stuff as us are like, oh, boo hoo, you have to be like the rest of us. But it's like, I can't help but miss it. But
Boy, there. Well, that could be a whole nother. I mean, that the thing about access for people like us. I mean, it is a changing landscape,
mhm,
and I don't think, and I do see this because I think some of the. I mean, good Lord, last weekend that was rough for yours truly. You see a lot of people who I think are kind of misinformed about like what YouTubers are or what we do
mhm,
or what kind of content that we create for people. And unfortunately, we kind of have to bear the brunt of it. I
yeah,
didn't think we were going to have to bear a pandemic too, but we're kind of opening up that door, and so naturally there is going to be resistance
mhm,
because auto racing is a very exclusive sport. Even like short track racing, for God's sakes. I mean, so these like access credentials, things like that are very, very coveted,
mhm,
and some people work their entire lives and never can get them. So yeah, I definitely get when there's pushback, like people like you or me or Darian or Eric even getting media passes. Sure, yeah, that totally get that. But at the same time, our audiences are very real. I mean, we've got 198 people watching right now, just us talk about things that almost have nothing to do with actual on-track racing. So and also our demographics are something that maybe other traditional outlets don't attract or can't attract based on a variety of different factors. So it was definitely weird too because like you mentioned the whole like how you will never, I certainly will never take for granted even just being in a racetrack
mhm,
whether I have access or not. But I'm just thinking about, especially kind of with my experience, obviously IndyCar starts a lot later in the year. I had gotten to in 2020 gotten full access to the Rolex 24, was able to cover that event in the style that I really wanted to. It was awesome. I get to St. Pete under similar conditions, and that's when the world shuts down. So that was a really tough one because it's like you work so hard to get there, you get there, and then something completely unrelated to racing or even completely unrelated to you comes in there and it's like, nope. The universe is saying, get out of the garage.
dude, Darian and Joey and I all like we honestly we felt so damn bad for you. We were like we're seeing all the stuff you were putting. We're like, this poor dude is like just wants to cover a damn race, and now he might be. I think I text you at one point. I'm like, hey, like, did you get out of there all right? And you're like, yeah, I just
Right.
made it home. I'm going to bed.
Yeah. I mean, that was so tiring. And again, it was one of those things where there was so much either misinformation or just like fear out there that you go, God, if I get this, it might be game over,
hmm
you know? And it was like, so you're scared. And that was the other thing too. It wasn't just the fact that the virus was scaring me. It was also like, oh my God, if this is horrible and it wipes or it just completely changes the world, we may not have racing at all anymore. Like, we may have a completely dystopian society. Now, some people would argue we did end up at that point. I would say we got out pretty good, all things considered.
It could be worse. It could be
Right.
a lot worse.
But those were the things that you were just kind of like going, like, there was so much uncertainty. It was really crazy. And I'll tell you what, I will say this. I would not want to relive that, but at the same time, I have that experience that not a lot of other people have, which is I was inside of St. Pete when virtually they weren't letting anybody in. So really, we're just kind of milling around in the garage. We're kind of talking to some of the drivers, kind of like what you were doing at Daytona, obviously completely under different circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, people are just like calling their parents and being like, you know, because a lot of the drivers in IndyCar are foreign. So like their folks were on the other side of the world and stuff. So it was a really weird. And the other thing, of course, that we've kind of found out with coronavirus is that it seems like a lot of times, like, people in power will just not tell you what's going on until the very last possible moment. And that's what happened at St. Pete. That we were sitting around that first day because they started postponing the practice sessions and stuff. And then they eventually had the mayor do a press conference where he was like, well, activities are done today, but the crews can still come in, but they have to do a temperature check and show up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then they shut it all down anyway. So it was weird time.
I remember because like NASCAR was like the last holdout of anybody. Like NASCAR was like, we're going to do it. And it was like, I think it's Saturday even. They were like, we're still going to have the race, even if we can't have fans here. We'll kick everyone out we don't have to have. And so like, I remember like we even going into Friday night before, because I was on the road when everything started shutting down. I was actually driving through the mountains of Tennessee. And it was like, I don't know if you've driven through there, but there's a part right before you get into Chattanooga where everything just goes like downhill.
Yes.
Yeah, I was at that part, and I get a call from I believe Joey, because Darian was flying. So Darian finds out when he gets off the damn flight. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah, and so I'm like going down there, white knuckling it through there as semi trucks are like nearly out of control near me, and I get this call like, yeah, dude, so it's looking like there might not be fans. I don't know if we'll be in, and I'm just like, f this, f that. I mean, I was livid. And then poor Darian, he gets picked up from the airport, and it's like, yeah, so they're not letting fans in. What? Like, so it could have been worse. I got updated at the moment, but I mean, yeah, it was so much mystery at the time. And the thing is like the podcast that we did the week before that, we had talked a bit about it because I think the NBA shut down when we were live, and because they shut down like that, like they were like, we're doing this game and then we're done.
Well, yeah, but what happened was Rudy Gobert was like getting asked about it, and he was getting annoyed about it, so he started touching all the mics and stuff, and then he tests positive. It's like, oh god, that was. Ugh.
I said I never want to live through that again.
Me neither.
But especially knowing people in the healthcare industry, it was just like, ugh,
I can't even imagine. I mean, yeah, I mean, I do have some. I mean, I remember, God. I have an uncle who's a pharmacist, and I just asked him because I got to see him over the summer, right before the race, because we were all going to the race still. Mm-hmm. But I asked him, I'm like, what's it like? And he's like, it's horrible. I mean, just like, and he's not like a down in the dumps kind of guy, and he just looked at me with like this just depressed expression, just completely somber, like horrible. I'm like, oh God.
Well, really quick before we keep moving, I'm gonna read off some super chats. We got a few. So Andrew Meyer says, "Love your Avatar: The Last Airbender shirt, Jarrett. Thank you." And spin the saucer. Edible Giraffe. Is he on your channel? Because I love this name so damn much.
Edible Giraffe. No, I have not seen Edible Giraffe. I would have remembered that one.
Edible Giraffe 59 for $5 says, "Does the Brickyard 400 lose some significance now that it's on the road course?"
Yes.
See, I guess we can probably debate on that. I have been on the train of NASCAR doesn't belong in Indianapolis.
Right.
for a long
I would
time.
also agree with that.
Like so when I saw that they were gonna at least do the road course, I was like, well, good, leave the oval to the people who do it best. And seeing how NASCAR is, in the past 10 to 15 years, really, the road course racing since I'd say the COT on has just gotten so much better because the car is so much more durable. Like I went back and watched I think the '04 race at Sonoma, and I was bored out of my mind because no one really touched each other much. Because if you did with those cars, you were screwed. That was like the
Right.
big downside of those cars. So like I'm happy about it. Like I'm planning on going in August, and I'm excited about it. I don't know if it'll be a great race because aside from like the last 5 laps, that Xfinity race really was not inspiring in my opinion. Um, but I do want to know what do you are you at least excited about it, or is it just sort of like a
I
band aid?
it's a band-aid. I mean, I'm curious about it. Um Especially after the Xfinity race, particularly after the finish. Um there's hope that it will be a good race. The problem is with Indianapolis, so much of it is based on tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, the Brickyard had what, 27, 28 years of tradition on the oval.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, there's really no going back at this point. I mean, you've made your decision here. I mean, that's that's the thing about the Brickyard to me is I think with the right package, the right star power, um, you could make the Brickyard 400 a race that people wanted to see again. Now that it's on the road course, it's a totally different product. And it's either going to work or it's not. And if this decision doesn't end up working for NASCAR and the Speedway, can you really go back and say, oh, wow, we made a mistake there. Time to go back to the oval? Because then you will have split the fan base even more. And now you're going to have people saying, well, it should stay on the road course rather than, everybody just going, the Brickyard sucks, whatever. I don't know. It's a weird. The Brickyard is one of the most fascinating things because of the fact that it is just completely imploded from. I mean, seriously,
It
I
really
would
has.
suggest everybody to watch the hype or the highlight tape from. It's all available on YouTube from '94.
Mm-hmm.
Watch like second round qualifying because they used to do 2 rounds of qualifying. They almost had like a bump day thing for the Brickyard, believe it or not. They had like 80 cars
Yeah.
show up the first year, and it's so cool. And the fans are everybody's the fans are the stands are filled. It's very exciting. There's a lot of hype. Everybody's excited to be there. It doesn't quite feel that way anymore. And I just the thing that I used to suggest was because I did think the road course was an option. I wouldn't have completely moved the race to it. I always said that I would have liked to have seen the Xfinity race go away and then do the Brickyard 400 weekend, have a 200-mile race on the road course and a 200-mile race on the oval. Maybe that's a way you could have gotten it to be a unique event or just something. I think the problem to me with the Brickyard was obviously the tire gate, but I think the
Yeah.
other thing was what I think they should have done with the Brickyard is maybe do something either with the qualifying format or the race format or something to differentiate it from the rest of the events, kind of like what they do with the Daytona 500. I don't know if qualifying races or something like that would have been the solution, but maybe you could do something like that, and maybe that would have helped it a little bit. Just because even when the Brickyard began, it was different. Like it had a different qualifying
Mm-hmm.
procedure. It was important to be there for teams and sponsors and drivers. And now it's just so much like the other events. I know that they tried one of the last years to make it the Chase cutoff race. That didn't really work all that well. I don't know. It needed something. I don't know if the road course is going to be a magic bullet though, and I really don't think
See,
it is.
I what I was I think I was talking with the guys that I do the podcast with, like in a private call at one point, and what I was saying would be something is that build around it. You get as many racing series in for like that week or weekend. And then I was saying you can solve a lot of problems I think that NASCAR has with the schedule with this. And the one that I was saying is you want more road courses, you want more short tracks, and you want to compact the schedule down so you're not competing with the NFL. Why not have the road course on Saturday, the oval on Sunday, and then Monday night go to IRP? Make Indianapolis one of the biggest events that you have the entire season. You then shorten the schedule down 2 weeks. You add a road course and you add a short track and you have a prime time event on a night for NBC.
I like that. I mean, I like that idea, and it kind of goes to the tagline. I mean, it says it on the water tower outside of Turn One, the racing capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an interesting one. I mean, the other thing about the Brickyard weekend is in a lot of ways they have tried that marketing. Even back in the day when it was just the Brickyard on the oval, they used to do stuff at IRP like the whole week. They would bring the USAC sprints and midgets there, the pavement ones. They would bring the NASCAR Truck Series. They'd bring Busch Grand National. So all those guys would be running. I think they even did USF 2000 at one year over there. So they, and then of course, as we've kind of been moving into the modern era, they've done Xfinity. They did a Grand Am / IMSA race there on the Friday before the Brickyard. So they've tried that before. But if it was all Cup Series races, that could be a game changer, I think. The problem is with that idea is, and what we've been seeing with practice and qualifying not happening, is that teams would have to bring 3 separate cars. They'd have to bring a road course car, a super speedway car, and a short track car. And that would be a lot of equipment to bring. And if you crash one of your cars, chances are, especially if you're a smaller team, you're not bringing a backup super speedway car. You're lucky if you're bringing 3 different cars, so that would probably be the one thing, would be like the cost issue of doing that. But I think we've all come to the same conclusion that something big needs to be done at Indy. My point of contention is I don't know if a road course race, especially with the oversaturation that the road course race has right now, the amount of events there, I don't know if a cup race there is special. The kind of the X factor, though, I will say this, and I think it's one of the things we're about to talk about, is the fact that it is going to be, like it was this year, a double header with IndyCar.
Yeah.
And so I will be interested to see, because we did see it actually affect the TV ratings for both IndyCar and NASCAR that Brickyard weekend, where they both ran. I mean, they both did record numbers for that time of the year. I would be curious to see when fans can show up, especially in that area where IndyCar is the king, to see if that means it's going to be a big crowd and a crossover crowd too. You got the NASCAR people showing up for the IndyCar race and the IndyCar people showing up for the NASCAR race. It could be a really good thing. That could be the X factor, I think.
Well, and with NASCAR doing their 3:30 starts, like you'll get your noon start for IndyCar.
Right, exactly. That's the best part of the whole thing, right? And you know what? I guess I'll also say the rain thing isn't a factor on road courses, as long as it's not an absolute monsoon or tornadoes coming through there. You can run in the rain even with the cup cars now. So a 3:30 start isn't a death sentence on a road course.
Let's see a few others here. Thank you, Tyler Mathis. Message retracted, but thank you for the $4.99. GN for $2 says, "What was the first NASCAR race you ever watched?" I'm interested in this one for you, David.
First NASCAR race I ever on TV?
Yeah, I think just in general, yeah.
I think it was the 97 Daytona 500. I think it was.
Mine was the 2005 Daytona 500.
Wow. Well, that's...
Yeah.
Wow, I feel old.
And I was 7 at the time, because because that same night was, or the night after that was when Avatar: The Last Airbender premiered, I remember. So it's like those 2 nights changed like the trajectory of my life for as a NASCAR fan and an Avatar fan. I was like, those 2 nights, man. Let's see.
That's amazing.
A few others here. Jake Baskinger, what's up, Jake, for the $1.99. I Spy with My Little Eye a WEC flag.
Yes. I got that at Sebring in 2019. I had a girl in a skimpy outfit hand it to me. It was great. Great time.
Nice.
Yeah.
PTM Billy for $4.99 says, "David, why does it cost so much for an IndyCar ticket compared to a NASCAR ticket?"
Does it?
What's an average IndyCar ticket cost?
I'm trying to remember. I haven't bought a ticket in a while. That's the problem. I think I bought one to Road America, and I think it was $80.
That's about in the same
Which was
ballpark.
the yeah.
Like,
But and I think the thing is too with the IndyCar tickets is they're like weekend tickets too. Like you get in all days.
yeah, I got a
I think.
weekend ticket for Coda this May, and it was like I think 150. I mean, it wasn't bad at all for a new track like on the schedule like that. Yeah, I didn't know that they were really that. Maybe it's where he was buying them from or what
Well,
city.
the other thing is if he's trying to buy an Indy 500 ticket versus say Cup at Dover or something,
Yeah,
that's there's going to be a discrepancy there because there's a discrepancy in demand for those two events. So
yeah, because the Daytona 500, we sat like our group sat in like the nosebleed section, going into one. I mean, we
right.
were. I think we were 4 rows from the top of the place,
Oof.
and that was $190 each for my girlfriend and I just for the 500, not including the other races I was at that week. So I was actually pretty happy they didn't let fans in for qualifying because I could just do the podcast and not have to spend money. Um, and then there's two more. Ryan Moore for $2 says, "How feasible is returning to IRP?" You might know more on this one than I do.
For Cup.
I maybe just in general for NASCAR.
Well, so the thing with IRP is they told NASCAR to go screw themselves when they took the Xfinity race away, because NASCAR was totally open to keeping the truck race at IRP, and IRP is like, well, you took literally our biggest money race of the year, which was Xfinity at IRP, so they were like, no, go screw yourself, like we're not gonna put up with that with a truck race. And so I think there's some wounds that need to be healed between NASCAR and IRP before there's like a legitimate event held there again. Um, and that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because you also now have kind of the established tradition, even though it's not going to be happening at Eldora anymore, of the trucks going and racing on dirt on or around Brickyard weekend. So
Mhm.
that's going to be the other thing that's going to be tough because the truck series has now moved on, and unless Xfinity, because they put on such a great finish last year on the road course, why on earth would you move that race now?
Yeah.
So I just don't see a place where one of the top three divisions of NASCAR runs there. Obviously, ARCA runs there, but that was something that was established before NASCAR bought them. So
Yeah. And then last one from John Pemberton for $5 says, "I was at IMS Tuesday. 125,000 seems to be target capacity for the 500. McLaren tests on the road course the 22nd and 23rd. A few teams on the oval the 25th."
yeah, well, that's interesting because so I guess yeah. So I don't know what information you're going off of there. 125 seems about the number that I've heard they're targeting. It's interesting that you had mentioned that McLaren is testing on the IMS road course. I know there's like a full field Indy 500 test happening on the 9th of April, 8th and 9th of April. I did not know any teams were testing on the oval before then, so I'm going to have to look into that because that might be something I'd actually travel to go cover. I had already been kind of looking at some other testing dates to cover before then because the first race at Barber is still over a month away at this point. So it's nice to try to get footage, especially when there's a guy like Jimmy Johnson or Romain
Mhm.
Grosjean testing. That stonks views in IndyCar world.
So that's so far as what we got for super chats. I guess we can move on. We can kind of combine the two, just because I think one can feed into the other at least. So one is Jimmy Johnson with IndyCar, and then the other is like I'd said before we went live. I'm like I want to get into it. I keep saying every year I'm gonna watch it like after the Indy 500. Like, oh yeah, I'll start watching more, and then I never do. So I don't know where you want, like, if you want to just start with Jimmy jumping in, or just you take over. You're the IndyCar guy. I'm along for the ride at this point.
Well, those things definitely feed into each other. There's no doubt about it. And I think Jimmy Johnson is going to have a sneaky effect on IndyCar viewership this year. I think he's going to help it quite a bit, to be honest with you. Even though I will be 100%, and I have been 100% honest with all of you guys. I don't think that Jimmy's going to be competing for wins this year. Don't go in with the expectation that you're going to see Jimmy Johnson running up front. Be happy if something crazy happens and he does, but what you're really coming to watch IndyCar for is a different form of racing, and hopefully an exciting form of racing. And I hope so. This is the thing about IndyCar. Especially for how much of the 500 do you watch? Do you just watch the race, or do you watch the kind of build up?
I'll be real, most of the time that it's on the morning of, I'm getting, because it's Memorial Day weekend, we're getting ready for a cookout, so I'm usually getting stuff, and I get there right as the green flag drops and then watch the post race. That's usually how
See,
it goes.
now we have different definitions of build up here, and that's kind of okay. So for the Indy 500 especially, I will tell you that your experience will be significantly better if you invest in watching. You don't have to sit there all day, every day for 6 hours at a time like crazy people like me do, and watch all of the practice. But honestly, like getting invested in watching, or at least keeping up with what's happening each day at the Speedway is kind of exciting, because you get kind of those storylines like what happened. I keep wanting to say last year because I consider it last year, but 2019, where Fernando Alonso was really in trouble and things went from bad for.
I kept up. I was watching your channel with that one. I did keep up with that, and I was
well.
intrigued.
There we go.
I was because you were the one who called it. I remember you called that. You didn't think he was in trouble. He might not.
I ruffled a lot. What was funny about that may have been part of where some of my problems currently stem. I ruffled a lot of feathers because I got some access to go to the first test in April at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and kind of my angle, my story, I guess if you want to put it into journalism terms, was following Fernando and Mclaren. And I just kind of stood in that pit and watched everything going down. And to quote Days of Thunder, I won't say the full quote, but it was a monkey screwing a football. I mean, I was watching this and going, these guys are completely unprepared. They are looking like their car's not running. They missed half of the day. I'm just like, these guys are out. I'm like, they're out to lunch. I'm like, and people were like, "Oh, David, you're full of crap. It's hyperbole." I'm like, I'm telling you guys, I stood there. I watched with my own two eyes for hours and hours. This looks like a team that's going to get bumped. I'm like, I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm looking at these guys and they just do not look like a team that came here prepared. And as the month goes on, they have a crash. And it turns out that, and this is the most unbelievable part to me, was the fact that the backup car wasn't even on the grounds because it was painted the wrong shade of orange for the McLaren corporate suits. And so their car sat over in a paint shop somewhere, and Juncos Racing, a team with literally no money, goes out and crashes in the exact same corner as Fernando. They pull their backup car out. It looks like shit. They put it all together in like 2 seconds. And they're, the next morning after they crash, they're out for practice, and the McLaren guys are still putting their car together in the garage. And you know what? They deserve to make the race, and McLaren didn't. But those are the stories that make, particularly watching Indianapolis, so investing, because so much can happen before the green flag even flies. Actual IndyCar racing, the problem in IndyCar racing, I've always kind of said this, is they don't bring enough of that Indy vibe to the rest of the races. I used to go to the Pocono 500, and I was just like, I was shocked. I'm like, you couldn't even bring like a local high school marching band to go march up and down the straightaway and play music. I couldn't believe that they have such a huge event, and they're able to put on an event that can get a 3.2 TV rating and get 500,000 people to show up to it. Mm-hmm. And then every other race, they can't figure out how to keep that magic going the rest of the time. So one thing that I think guys like Jimmy Johnson, Scott McLaughlin, and Romain Grosjean are going to bring, running the majority of the races, McLaughlin's going to run all of them, is they're going to bring that star power that you usually only see at the Indy 500. Indy 500 a lot of times will get guys like Kurt Busch, Fernando Alonso. Now you've got them running the majority, or at least uh, most of the season. And I'm hoping that that will help a little bit. So we will be able, I mean, and people are going to get annoyed with me because I'm going to talk quite a bit about how's Grosjean doing? How's McLaughlin doing? How's Jimmy doing?
Mm-hmm.
But I realize maybe the other guys don't really understand it so much, is that that's how you're going to get people invested in Colton Herta and Joseph Newgarden and Alexander Rossi and Scott Dixon, is kind of comparing these guys from outside of the sport and saying, okay, this is how Grosjean, an F1 driver, is stacking up against Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden. And this is how Jimmy Johnson, 7-time NASCAR Cup champion, he's jumping into this thing. And he's really honestly, Jimmy's put in so much work too. I've been really impressed with him. I mean, he is committed to this. I've just got to say that because people are hating on Jimmy. I see all the time. And I'm like, he's not just an old man jumping in and saying, I'm going to take a joyride in IndyCar. He is now an IndyCar driver and he's acting that way. So, whether he finishes first or last, I think he's put in the work and I think he absolutely belongs there. But it's going to be, I don't know. I don't really know how to tell someone how to get into IndyCar. I would just say, watch it and, see how you can kind of enjoy it. I mean, I create content, hopefully that helps people kind of get into the sport. I know I make the Bandwagoners Guide every year that at least introduces the drivers and stuff. But ultimately, it's kind of on IndyCar to get the product out there for people to consume.
I think, going back to the Indy 500 compared to the other races, I think you kind of hit on why, because I never really stopped to think about it. You don't really think about something you're not watching, I never stopped to really think. I think that's why the Indy 500, though, draws me in, is more of the build up to it. Like, any NASCAR race you go to, whether it be the Daytona 500 or Martinsville or Pocono, they build it up as the biggest event in the world that day. Whereas, like, I was watching, the last couple of years I've watched IndyCar. It's like the Indy 500 is that way, and you can tell it is the spectacle that they sell it as. But then the other ones, there have been times I've tuned into an IndyCar race, and I mean I've seen more build up for a race at the local short track a mile down the road. And and it's not, I don't mean it as a disrespect. It's just like, I watch a NASCAR race, or like I used to get up at 3 a.m. with like back in 2019 with like Darian and Ed Soundhead and Drive Through, and we'd all watch the F1 race together on Discord, and they built that thing up. And that's like the thing I think that's what IndyCar misses, is like, if you can just build it up and draw me in, the racing will do the rest. Like, that's the thing I say about NASCAR. It's like, if you can get the racing good enough that there's storylines going into each race, the racing will invest people. Like, I think that's my big the big difference for me with IndyCar. I will say, I am an Alexander Rossi fan simply for flipping somebody off going down the front stretch. It drew me in. I had said I was with my grandfather and my uncle watching that race, and I was like, that's like a NASCAR driver move in IndyCar. I like that guy. I must stick with watching him. And then I got thanks to your help with a lot of it, I got to talk to Colton, and so I'm rooting for Colton too. So like, I know the names. It's just I have to get the drive to watch it. Like, are there like certain old races, for instance, that you'd immediately recommend? I will write them down right now if there's any that are on YouTube. That
one of them I always say is 1995 Cleveland. That's always the one I kind of go. It's a road course race. Actually, it's an old
the airport.
Airport, yeah.
Okay.
But it's just a race that I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's really kind of start to finish. It's very exciting. And there's a lot of stuff that happens right at the end, which is kind of, but it's just a good race. There's not really a moment. There's not like one moment that everybody points to and said, because there's a lot of races, especially like the Indy 500, where people go, oh, remember when Sato crashed on the last lap? It's just a good race start to finish.
I will say one thing that I think this is something that kept me off it for a while. I tried getting into IndyCar towards the end of 2011.
Oh yeah.
And the first race I watched was Las Vegas, and I was like,
a lot of stories like that.
And I think that was the thing. The Newman crash last year woke me up to this with NASCAR a lot, but I think that's something that subconsciously has always been in the back of my head. Is like, I'm watching NASCAR, and the majority of crashes, the person's probably going to be all right. I mean, granted, you still have to have the respect. And I think, like I said, the Newman crash has rewritten that for me. But like with IndyCar, I'm watching. I'm like, man, this dude flips over into the fence. It's over. Like
Hmm.
it's so much more. And this is no disrespect to NASCAR. It's so much more dangerous. And
Right.
I think that was the thing that for the longest time it had scared me off of it. What was it? What year were they racing in Fontana and they had like two cars flip in the grass, or maybe it was one car, but
2015. Yeah.
I remember watching it and I was like, this is incredible. Like, is this what they do every week? And then that crash happened, and immediately like my face went like completely white, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, I've gotten better since then, and I've kept up a bit with what they've done, not to the degree of you or even Darian.
Right.
Um, so now that I like actually feel comfortable watching it, I'm just like, okay, how do I get into it? That is another question. Do like that Fontana race? Is that how most oval races are?
No, no,
Okay.
not anymore. I mean, they used to pack race in the mid 2000s, particularly in the IRL. I saw in the chat actually people suggesting Michigan 500s. The Michigan 500s are ones like especially the ones from 98 to 2001. Those are races I think you'd really enjoy. There's a lot of slingshot passing. I mean, and they're going 250 miles an hour when they're doing
Jesus.
this. I mean, it was I mean,
Holy shit.
those races are unbelievable. And that is something that's missing from IndyCar racing is just kind of the wow factor. Still is some. I mean, you just mentioned it, like the fact that like visually it looks more dangerous, even though something. Wow, that was quite a fart can there. Even though I always stress this because you brought it up about the Newman thing, and we saw it with Romain Grosjean this year in Formula One. Is like auto racing across the board is an extremely dangerous profession. And what we're watching is, anytime those drivers go out on that racetrack, something bad could happen. And that's something I always try to keep in the back of my mind, especially like, and I see this actually everywhere. It's like people wish that a driver will crash or,
Mm-mm.
or somebody will wreck somebody. And I look and I think about that because I know I've had to stop myself before. I'm like, oh, I hope he gets into it. And I think about it. I go, what happens if somebody, we've even in places like Kansas where it seems like somebody gets airborne or flips every
I
year.
know.
If somebody gets airborne at Kansas and drives underneath them and they go the wrong way into the fence, even in a cup car, that could have tragic consequences. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, man, these guys are racing at 180 to, when we're talking IndyCar, 235 miles an hour. Things can badly happen, and it's just and honestly, the more I begin to speak with drivers in particular, I do have to tell myself like it could happen to some of the guys that I know.
Mm-hmm.
It almost happened to my friend Braden Eves this summer. He flipped a car over at Indianapolis, and the roll bar actually crushed, broke his neck. Very easily could have killed him. And there was a point last summer where I was like, do I have to go to a funeral? So this sport can be rough. There's no doubt about it.
And like I've gotten to know well, we both have gotten to know better Ryan Vargas.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
he got in that crash at Talladega, it wasn't even like in comparison to any other, it wasn't like a horrible crash. But when I saw like there were a few people that were like saying how happy they were he wrecked, like it was like the first time, granted for Junior I would get pissed for, but it was the first time that like I got legitimately pissed when people were like, "I'm so glad that they crashed," or "I hope they crash," or "I hope this person crashes." And I got pissed. I was in the car on the way down to Talladega for the Cup race, and I was in the car with my girlfriend, and I like some of those tweets started popping up in our group chat, and I'm just like, man, what? I went on a damn rant, like because I was
Right.
just it pissed me off. With the thing that people forget about the Newman one, just going back to that one, because that's where I apologize for keeping going back to NASCAR. That's just where most
Oh, it's no
of my
problem.
as they're spamming noon in the chat. I love it. But like but people forget the week of the Newman crash is, I think, that Friday night at the truck race. Somebody flipped right down the backstretch, and it was right in front of me, Danny, Darian, all of us. And like Danny got our reactions after the fact, and like you can see in the video, like I'm visibly shaken up. I'm just like, yeah, that whole oh my god, like I couldn't speak. Like I was just staring off into space, looking at the truck, and he was completely fine. I mean, he radioed in, he was fine right after the flip, but it was just, it was the first time I'd seen a flip like that, and even though I know from experience a flip like that where you just keep tumbling, tumbling, tumbling is much better. It scared the living shit out of me because I'd never seen such what's power, I guess,
Violence
violence,
with it.
yes,
Yeah.
violence and power behind that before. I think that's why the Newman one, as I turned off the UFO again, just this it stuck with me because like a few other people I know were like, yeah, it sucks or whatever, but we got, it's part of racing. And then I think I had like the same take kind of that you did. It's like, okay, we need to fix something with this because we can't take a chance at that again.
Well,
Um,
the big thing with the Newman crash to me was like I'm like these are the most dangerous races in NASCAR, and that's something that I think people don't, for whatever reason, I don't want to say don't respect, but it seems like some fans don't respect the plate tracks. Like
mhm.
I sometimes watch these reaction videos and they're like, "When's the wreck gonna happen?" And I'm like, "Ooh," because it's like like I said, this is 200 miles an hour. And like we saw with Newman, if somebody gets T-boned at 200 miles an hour at the wrong place, and I mean, God forbid, he got up awfully high. If that car had gone the wrong direction in the state it was in after having a compromising hit like it had, if that car had gone into the fence, I mean, I don't even want to think about what it might have happened. It's just, we have to, I think as fans, and again, we live in a very blessed and cursed age. Blessed in the sense that it's not like the 60s where guys are dying every single week.
Mhm.
But it's cursed because I think a lot of fans don't respect what they're watching sometimes. And they lose track of the fact that these are people, real human beings doing this. And, there's, and this is the other thing about, we've talked about fans at racetracks. It's never not been dangerous to go to an auto
Yeah.
race. I'm just throwing that out there to people. Like I know my parents went to the 1987 Indy 500 and they had literally a tire go over the back of them and decapitate a guy in the top row.
Ugh.
And so it's, there are things can happen. I mean, I was, two of the Pocono races I went to. Justin
Yeah.
Wilson unfortunately got killed, and Robert Wickens got maimed for life, paralyzed. So I mean, these are things that it can be a very rough and brutal sport.
Yeah, and like like you were saying about plate races being, they are the most dangerous like in all of NASCAR. And so like I took my girlfriend to Daytona last summer, and she's like, "Oh, are we gonna be like up close?" And I'm like, "Hell no."
No.
She's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because." Like, and I was like, do you know who Kyle Larson is outside of the racial slur? And she's like, no. And I'm like, watch this from, I think it was 2013. And I'm
Right.
like, do you know Austin Dillon, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, watch this. And then I'm like, okay, oh, was it Brendan Gaughan, or it was somebody else? And was it 2019? I can't remember. Yeah, it was. I think it was Brendan Gaughan. And I'm like, watch this. And she's like, oh my god, they do that at like every race. And I'm like, they're starting to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Well, Brad's crash at the end of this year's race was just
yeah.
awful looking. Just,
Yeah, in the stands we were all like happy for McDowell, and then we're like, wait, is Brad okay? And like, because what people, a lot of people don't understand, because I've gotten criticism from people on Twitter. They're like, the TV showed that a while ago, and I'm like, yeah, but we don't get the TV feed at the racetrack.
right.
And when they don't sell, the track pass and all these other things that you can keep up and hear the radio on, it's like people at the track a lot of times are the last to know everything. Like, that is like the huge difference, I think, in all, and I would assume in all of auto racing compared to um, stick and ball sports. Is just it's a complete different animal because of just the size of the facility, the fact that the communication that you get from those covering the race is much more different than at a game. But yeah, we should probably move on to the next
Okay.
thing. I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, we still got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we're getting to grim places here.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's lighten the mood up a little bit. Come on.
You want to talk about a bunch of old geezers running the SRX?
Why not?
Yeah, let's do it. So
we just talked about how dangerous the sport is. Now we're gonna throw Grandpa in there.
So, okay, I don't mean to be negative. I swear, I tell people this on the podcast all the time. I don't mean to be negative about this, but there is one thing I am worried about, and I mentioned it with the geezers comment. Is like, man, I like all the drivers that are in it. Like every single one of them, I'm like, yes, they deserve. They are superstars. But at the same time, I'm like, there was a race at Bristol back in 2010 where they did something similar to this, and it didn't end off. I think it was 2010. It didn't end off so well. I mean, granted, they're younger. Don't get me wrong, but like that, I guess there are two things. So there's that the age of the drivers just doesn't. It worries me because it doesn't draw. It's not going to draw in a bunch of people because racing is such a niche sport now in America that, unless you have, an Earnhardt, a Gordon, a Montoya, it's really not going to bring attention. I mean, there's a few others I didn't mention, but I was wondering if you were thinking the same thing as me on that one, or if you think I'm kind of overblowing it.
No, I agree with you. There's a couple of things that make me nervous about SRX. Number one is, are they going to have all the cars built for the season opener? Because right now they have the one prototype car, which they ran for the first time this week, and they're going to need at least 20 cars to have all of their drivers get a car. And that's not just counting the backup cars, because the other factor is, like you mentioned, some of these guys are rusty. They're going to crash the cars. Do you have backups? So that's a factor to me. The other thing, like you mentioned, is star power. And that's going to be what's going to make or break this series is, and I think we all love Michael Waltrip here.
Yeah.
But is Michael Waltrip really going to draw people in to watch this? I think guys like Mark Webber, Bill Elliott, yeah, sure. I think people are going to want to watch them, especially in person. I think attendance will be pretty good. Tony Stewart's a big draw, of course, being in this. But on television, that's the thing that I'm kind of scratching my head on, because the thing about IROC that was such a big draw about IROC is not only do you have that melting pot, you got the NASCAR guys, you got the road racers, you got the IndyCar guys, you've got sports car guy or whatever. You had them in their primes. Mm-hmm. You had prime Tony Stewart against prime Elio Castroneves versus prime Scott Pruitt. Now you're getting all the same matchups that we got in IROC 20 years ago, but the drivers have aged 20 years too, so that's the thing that I'm kind of looking at this and kind of going, because I think of that first race flops. I think that first race is going to be really important for SRX. If it's a disaster, or if it's just not fun to watch, or if it does a terrible TV rating, that may, because the thing about SRX too is it almost feels like one of those things that guys like you and Darian will be doing a video 10 years from now. Like, remember SRX? It's going to be one of those things like, oh yeah, I remember when they tried to do that. And it ran like one race and it was a disaster and it lost everybody a bunch of money.
It feels like, and I hope I'm wrong, but just from the build up to it, it seems like it would work. Like on paper, this works.
Well, we've been begging for an IROC series for years now, ever since the original IROC shut down.
It feels like racing's version of the XFL. I mean, it really kind of does.
Oh, that's harsh. I keep going with the senior tour and the PGA, but boy, the XFL, wow.
Well, it's just it should work. You have all the pieces in place. It's just a matter, and don't get me wrong, I think that Tony Stewart and Ray Evernham and everybody involved, I think they're much smarter than most of the people involved in XFL, and I think it was AAF. I think they're all much smarter people. And then they understand their fans and actually take feedback. That's what I like about them. They take feedback. I saw your splitter video.
Right, yeah. I was like, we're setting up
I saw your splitter video. See, I was honestly thinking they were gonna be like, we got a Valence and Dale Jr. and like something like that. But no, there's there's not like again it shouldn't be this way, I don't think, but it is. There's not many compelling storylines if you're not a diehard racing fan. Like I love Bobby Labonte, but the last 15 years, 10 to 15 years of Bobby Labonte's career were not inspiring by any means.
Right.
The only I was when they first announced it, I was thinking they were just going to get people who had like just retired, or they were going to get people from all forms that, yeah, maybe they're kind of past their prime, but they can still like race. I was thinking maybe Jeff Gordon will be in a race. Maybe Dale Jr. will be in one, or maybe they'll get Jimmy Johnson. I don't know.
Jimmy's got a lot on his plate these
Yeah.
days.
The only one I've heard that in my opinion, and granted, 2020 does not back this up, but I still think he has enough left in him on a short track basis, is Matt Kenseth. I've heard for Slinger. That's the only one where I'm like, man, he draws me in. Because even Tony Stewart at the end of his career, yeah, he had some good runs, but I mean, he was running the same equipment that Kevin Harvick dominated the series with for the better part of a decade, and he made it in off of winning on the last lap. Granted, he earned it. I'm just that's what worries me, is like you have drivers that are past their prime, past their marketability, really, for most of them, and
Well,
they
I
might
would
not
say
put a
that.
good race on.
Well, I think you're getting to a point that I think I can kind of add to your point there, which is you talked about Bobby Labonte having a lackluster end of his career, Tony Stewart having a lackluster end of his career. In fact, most of the drivers in this series, you could say, had a lackluster end of their career outside of Mark Webber, who won the World Endurance Championship and then quit. Most race car drivers, even if they retire, a lot of times they come back. And when they come back, they're not as good. Unlike a lot of other sports, race car drivers seem to make a lot of comebacks. And I think racing fans have seen a lot of these guys recently. It's not like, for example, like the Fast Masters, while that was a complete disaster, you got to see Bobby Unser and Bobby Allison and guys who hadn't raced in 15 years go out there and race. This is Michael Waltrip ran a NASCAR race like 2 or 3 years ago, a cup race, like the Daytona 500.
Something like
Marco
that.
Andretti was on the damn pole for the Indy 500 last year. It's like these guys really haven't had a time to go away and kind of be forgotten for a little while. And that's the problem with doing like a racing senior tour. Unless the drivers have really been away for a while, a lot of these guys just aren't draws, because you can just go to a short track and watch Tony Stewart race.
Yeah.
He races like 90 times a year. He's going to go race drag racing.
Same with Ken Schrader. I mean, I got to talk to Schrader in Homestead back in 2019 briefly, and I mean, he had like 75 races planned for the 2020 season. I mean, you can see it. I mean, granted, it's cool to see these people on TV. I'm gonna watch, because I'm looking at my schedule here. I have like the whole year on my desk, and the first race is Knoxville, and then the next one's Eldora. So like right off the bat, I'm like, okay, that's pretty badass. Like I'm gonna be watching. And then let's see, Lucas Oil, Slinger, Fairgrounds. Did I miss one?
Yeah, I think you missed the season opener.
I
think they're going to a pavement track first.
Which one was that?
I gotta look it up.
I didn't write it down then.
Yeah, let me, because I think they added some tracks to the schedule. I think that's because they were gonna do like
6.
4.
Yeah, I think 6 is what it's set at now, but I'm not sure.
Stafford
yes,
Speedway.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Let me write that down. I don't know why I didn't write that down.
It's on June 12th.
Oh no, I'll have to miss if it's a night race. I'll have to miss the Xfinity.
Ooh,
Texas
Slinger
race.
is on my birthday.
Really?
All right,
Nice.
Yeah.
I think they already sold out on that one.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, because Eric and I were talking about going to it, and then he like looked on the website, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they already sold out." Because he's been to Slinger before. I've been told to go to Slinger because it's freaking badass. Yeah, it's funny with the minute delay in the chat. Now they're all like, "Stafford, you idiot."
That's fun.
But that's just, I like for the most part. I'm not sure about like the '70s style wing on the back, honestly. But I like for the most part what they did with the car. It reminded me of like a mix between a late model and like the front bumper being so flat and big reminded me of like the old Gen 4 Talladega cars. That's immediately what came to my mind.
It's definitely got a lot of Ray Evernham, Jeff Gordon
Yeah.
kind of era Hendrick Motorsports in that. I mean, it's got. So I kind of looked at it and I saw inspiration from the Superbirds, obviously. I saw inspiration from 90s Cup cars a lot, actually. In fact, the thing I really saw was the 95 Pontiac. If you look at the 95 Pontiac, the especially the front end of it is almost exactly the same. It's kind of funny. Um, and then a lot of people have been pointing out that it looks a lot like an F40, a Ferrari F40, which is kind of another interesting one.
Yeah, I
I can't
saw
wait
the
to see it
side.
in red.
I saw the side by side, and I'm like, I can see it.
Right. What if Ferrari entered NASCAR? There you go. There's a free video idea to whoever wants to make that one.
I seem to be the what if guy now, so I'll just do. I,
There you
I,
go.
I,
Free
lit-
video. There's a free 500,000 views right there.
I literally had somebody today be like, "Yeah, I'm binging your what if playoff series," and I'm like, and I saw which one they were on, and I'm like, that one's gonna turn you off because that was not my best work. No, but I'm excited for it though. That's the thing. I'm excited for it as a fan, and just at least that I get to see these people. But I agree with you that the first race is going to be the first big hurdle, and then if I think personally if they can get past that, a second season is guaranteed.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be the hardest part because all the hype is gone unless you do get the Gordons, the Earnhardts, the Kenseth, anyone that's like still could have it, as they're I think like 5 or 6 years out of their retirement at that point. Um, I don't that's where I see them running into the biggest snags is like, yeah, you got like they got the short term down, like they know how to hype it up for diehard race fans. It's how do you draw in more people, and is I I. I haven't seen. I know it's CBS Sports that's doing it, but is it main CBS or is it
Yes,
CBS?
and that was
Okay.
something I got wrong in my video and was corrected on quite a bit because I had remembered it was like announced as CBS Sports Network and not for some reason they didn't. Maybe I just missed it. I'll gladly take it if I missed it, but it seemed like they didn't really talk about which network it was on for quite a while. But yeah, it is on the big CBS, so that's
Okay.
good for them, for sure, to get network television. And it's also, I think we should start thinking about this because I know the IndyCar contract is up this year, television wise. NASCAR's contracts are coming up. We saw the NHL just move off of NBC. Um, is this CBS dipping their toe in the water and going, what's auto racing gonna, what's an inexpensive way for us to kind of
That's
gauge auto racing, particularly because they've got representatives from every different series here
yep.
too. That's the other thing that I'm kind of looking at and going, this isn't just NASCAR guys, this is
This is
everybody. So
well, and the thing immediately as a content creator, I started thinking I'm like, man, that'd be great if they can get better ratings or they can draw people in. And then I did remember one thing, and I think Darian, I told him about it. And he's like, no, don't have them come. Uh, we ain't gonna be using clips from CBS because you know who is one of the
oh,
companies.
Viacom, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be running into the like because I follow a lot of commentary channels and I take a lot of inspiration on my channel from like Captain Midnight. I don't know if you watch him. He does like movie reviews.
I
Um,
think I've heard of him.
him as well as like a few others. But a lot like I can't name them off the top of my head, but they do a lot of like movie reviews or analysis, and I like to emulate that a bit. And they talk about Avatar a lot. Well, Avatar is a Nickelodeon property, and then you got Viacom, and that is one thing that I do worry about. I mean, granted, it's 5 years away, but as a content creator, like you or me, for like could use a clip, and it's like, oh yeah, we're taking your channel off forever. You're done. Goodbye.
Well, I mean, you know, That's why you got to go to the racetrack and get media credentials and just shoot your own stuff.
Yeah,
Just saying.
I have people like in my videos for the few weeks after Speed Weeks. They're like, dude, stop using the damn Clash finish. I know you got a good shot of it, but I'm sick of seeing it. And I'm like, you see, but copyright, not a problem.
It's like they're not going to take me down for using this. You see.
And to be fair, like to NASCAR and the people that like we know in NASCAR, they're pretty fair to us. I mean, they'll let us. They've helped us out a lot.
Can I? Not going to throw any particular series under the bus here, but all I'm saying is I've talked a ton of crap about NASCAR, and they are so gracious to me behind the scenes. I really have got to to use a wrestling term, to put NASCAR over. Like, they are a great, honestly, they are a great organization to work with if you're a media person. They really are. Yeah, I'm like, no bullshit there.
Like if that the thing that I want to tell the chat, because I know the chat hates on NASCAR a lot too. It's like it's usually, I mean, 95% of the time, if I run into copyright issues, it's Fox Sports or NBC Sports. Like, the few times it is NASCAR, unless it's like the championship race, like that one. I mean, I've literally been told, like, hey, get your own footage for that one, because like that one's off limits. Like, the champion, like that is one thing. The champion coming to the line, except for some reason 2020 with Chase Elliott. They know where their money's at.
Oh yeah.
But like every one of the Homestead ones, I tried doing like a video recently on Homestead, and I was like, I got like copyright stuff on every single one from like 2014 all the way to 2019, which coincides with the playoff era, just saying. And that's like the one that's off limit. But I mean, I had a few weeks ago, I had problems where NASCAR blocked my video in like 4 countries. And I like texted somebody that I know in there, and I was like, hey, like this happened. I thought it was cool. And he goes, oh yeah, hold on a second. Half hour later, my video was good to go. Like, NASCAR is fully behind what people are doing online. Like, they get so, like, that's why people are like, oh, you're just a bootlicker, you're doing this, you just doing that so they pay you. And I'm like, no, I don't get a cent from NASCAR. Like, not like none. I don't think any of us do, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
not me. They certainly don't pay me.
You, me, I know that none of us in the podcast, none of us get a cent from NASCAR. Like, they don't have to do this. Like, I know the NFL, for instance, like, they come after people nonstop. Same with the NBA. Like, NASCAR doesn't have to do this. Like, they're just really freaking chill. So that's why I'm like, hey, let's not hate on them too much.
I can say this. Like, the closer I get to racing, all forms of it, I realize more and more why each series is where it is. Because if you're coming from like my perspective, like I grew up, I mean, obviously, like I just told you, I watched the 97 Daytona 500, right? I've been watching NASCAR for a very significant portion of my life. But obviously I grew up in a household where my dad worked in the IRL. We went to the Indy 500 every year. So I knew I was in that kind of mindset where I'm an IndyCar fan. I'm reading all the books and stuff. But I always used to say to myself, especially as a kid, I was like, why is IndyCar not as popular as NASCAR? And the closer I get to it, the more I realize why series are where they are. And like you just gave a great example with NASCAR, they are very forward thinking. They look at, there was a point where NASCAR YouTube gained a ton of traction around like 2014, 2015, 2016. A lot of content creators, lots of people come into the forefront. It would have been very easy for NASCAR to, at that point, say, we don't want these kids involved, or young adults, or even adults who do this. We don't want those people to make this content. It infringes on our rights. We hate them. They're nobodies. We don't want them to grow. NASCAR went the complete opposite direction and said, we're going to embrace NASCAR YouTube. We're going to embrace social media NASCAR, and we are going to foster it and help it grow. And full credit to them. They're looking to the future. They're looking at ways they can grow their sport and grow their base and keep it sustained with a fan base that's interested. And, the way people consume racing is changing. And NASCAR, at least to me, of most of the series out there, now other series, of course, are beginning to kind of catch up. Like Formula One, for example, really has kind of doubled down in the last few years. IMSA, which is owned by NASCAR, is pretty good as well. A lot of these series have embraced that kind of social media side of things. And, you know, and you think about too, so many things in NASCAR, like, even though they did like tell Brad, you can't bring the cell phone in the car anymore. Think how big, I mean, NASCAR Twitter was started that day.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, you know, it was
Mhm.
like, so I think NASCAR has just been on the forefront of it, and they've been smart enough not to try to do anything to tramp it down.
I think that's a good place to end off that part there, because there's just still a few more. This is one problem for those of you watching, is that like listening to us talk. We love to talk about this. Like, I don't think anyone can question, like, you and I love auto racing.
Right, right. I could talk. You know, you should never do something. You should. This is the thing. There's two things you should do on YouTube if you're starting a channel. Number one, uh, do the content that you search for and can't find. And number
Mhm.
two, do something that you're willing to talk about for the rest of your damn life. Because if
Yep.
you get successful at it, you're better freaking like what you're talking about.
Oh my, that's how, like, over the winter, I'd made comments to people before about this, but I'll say it again, like, you, myself, and Eric were like the only three people I would see, like, when I'd look up NASCAR from like mid November through January. I was like,
Really,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
realize that.
So, because I have, like, you know, of course, my account that I got a lot of subscribers on, but I have like two or three other ones that I like just have other subscriptions to, just because I like to keep this feed relatively straight line on racing. But I have another one where I'm subscribed to like 40 different content creators on racing, and like I went on that one day, and I'll admit the water is very clear because I subscribed to myself on it. Um, and literally there was like a week where like every single day, I mean, there'd be a few sprinkled in here or there, but it was like David Eric Iceberg, David Eric Iceberg, like every day. Um,
Well, here's a little secret about December too, is like the winter time leading up to Christmas, like the ad revenue is really good. So like you
Dude,
should,
I had three videos go over 150,000 in December, and I was like,
oh
booyah!
yeah,
Like I had
yeah.
I had the Waltrip cheating scandal in '07. I had what was I
What is
had
with Michael Waltrip videos? They
dude,
seem to
I
like
know.
all what why?
I don't know, dude. I have like three Waltrip videos over 100,000 views, and I don't know why. Like I get that he's a likable person, but I didn't know he was that likable. It was
Is it literally just he was the guy that won the Dale race? Is that
it
what it is?
It might. I mean, I think the thing Michael Waltrip is great at is like, because Michael Waltrip, like, behind the scenes, away from like the cameras,
Right.
is more quiet, and he is an incredibly intelligent person. So like
Both of the Waltrips are that way, by the way.
yes, I met Daryl twice at Chicagoland, and both times I was surprised. Like, he was still a little energetic, but he was not like, you know, TVDW. Like, I mean, not even close. And they're brilliant at marketing themselves. Like, yeah, people might get annoyed by some of the stuff they do, but you know damn well that that's Michael Waltrip or that's Daryl Waltrip, and those moments like stick in your head. Like, I could literally say milk and cereal, and a bunch of people will be Daryl Waltrip. Just, I mean, you probably just did that too. Like, you immediately thought Daryl Waltrip, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they're incredibly intelligent people. It's like they're much smarter, and their content is much more intelligent than who I'm about to compare them to. But they're kind of like the NASCAR Kardashians. Like, these people
Oh
aren't,
yeah.
they're not stupid, but they can play stupid well. Like, it's not real. It's an, because you look back at like '05 truck races when Mikey was doing the commentary, and it's like it's a completely different person. He sounds like every other commentator. And like, I don't, it was like 2008, I think it was. It's like the cutoff line where it just took off. And I'm like, I don't know why. But yeah, Mikey videos and a video about a stripper car owner. Those were the ones that took off for me.
I do remember. I do remember seeing.
Did
Well,
I do want to ask, did you watch it? Because I know for a fact if you didn't, you're gonna laugh your ass off at what I have to say next.
I probably need to watch it. I don't think I did watch it.
So
I think I was just kept seeing it recommended to me, and I kept watching the views go up, and I was like, man, that's
so
a great thumbnail.
yeah, well, it's funny because YouTube actually shadow banned it. It went from getting like
Oh,
It was no, so like it was getting. I had to actually have 5 points help me out with it a bit, and credit to 5 points if he's watching. Like you're the man.
Good guy.
I think we both know why we said that. Anyway,
Inside baseball.
but anyway, I was getting like 5 to 7,000 views an hour on this video, and then it went 7,000, 1,000, 100, 30, 12, and I'm like, what the hell? Because I'm sitting here like, because it just kept growing and growing and growing, and then like YouTube just did that and it stopped, but so that was weird. But the funny part that like everyone, as soon as I point it out, notices and they go back and watch it, is that I used a band orchestra on loop playing Come Get Her. And people are like, wait a minute, did he play that, like the TikTok like Come Get Her song? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, that's freaking awesome.
Well, wasn't that the other thing too, that freaking Darian with the fans getting killed video did pumped up kicks?
Yeah. I turned that video on and that came on before he started talking, and I'm like, oh, he did not just do that. He did not just do that. Oh my god, I was.
That's a little more edgy than I would probably go there.
Well, yeah, because like no, that's something I would have done in 2018. Like I always tell people, like people are like, I'm gonna go back and watch all your content, like the shows you did in 2018. I'm like, don't. I'm like supreme edgelord, and it's not even like a good one either. It's like I just tried being edgy and controversial for the sake of it.
YouTube has changed. Honestly, I was surprised because somebody played me a clip from the Daytona Day video that I did, and I was like, it was a joke. Like I said something to the effect of, because I was making fun of NASCAR fans in California. I'm like, do you really believe that some place that would vote for Hillary Clinton would care about NASCAR?
I remember
and I'm
that.
like, oh my god. I'm like, I would have never make that. I would get canceled so fast if I made a joke like that today. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, just what a different environment just a few years YouTube has become.
That, and I tell people, like, when you look back, like 2018 was like when Darian and I and Danny and I think like IDK and a few other people came on the scene, and stuff started changing a lot at that point. And I told people, I'm like, listen, the thing you have to know two things when you go back and watch that stuff. Well, three. One specifically about me. One, I was boring as shit back then. I apologize. Aside from the Teresa video, I was monotone and boring. And even in that, when I was monotone, I just was a smartass. But the two things you have to know overall about NASCAR YouTube and motorsports in general YouTube back then, 2018 was a much more edgy time where you could get away with a lot more stuff. And it wasn't even like to the level that 14, 15 was. Like that was the wild, wild west.
Right.
And I tell them, what you have to remember about all of us, whether it's Eric or me or Darian, Danny, you, is we all were 3 to 4 years younger, depending on what video you're watching. Like me at 19, 20 is way different than me now at 23. Like, there's shit that I said back then. I mean, I've cussed a few times, but I mean, there's a running joke that's been going now for 3 years on the podcast of my cussing abstinence because I cussed so much that I kept getting us demonetized. Because it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that when we started. Like you could say whatever the hell under the sun you wanted, and then it was like I think towards the end of 18, YouTube like laid the hammer down and was like, "You're not doing this. This is the law of the land. Shut up." Basically, like if you're gonna cuss, get demonetized or get out. But that's what's so crazy about it. And what's even crazier to me is like every year it seems like there's one or two people that just like pop up out of nowhere. Like, and 2019 was Slap. Like, he just came.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when he went to Bristol with us, I had more subscribers than him, and by the end of the year, I had 30,000 less than him.
Yeah. No, we're all way behind him now.
Dude, yeah. I think he's. Let me check his channel. I think he's about to hit 100K, if I'm not mistaken. He's at 97.6.
The YouTube algorithm is a thing that I still don't fully understand.
Same.
Because honestly, I think in some ways I'm actually hurt. Me personally, I'm hurt because I started my channel in 2008 and didn't upload like you know, I didn't upload very much between 2008 and 2014.
Hmm.
And, 14 was when I started uploading kind of semi regularly. And I think in some ways, YouTube likes it when a newer channel gets traction rather than an older channel getting traction. Not that it's impossible for an older channel to get traction,
Hmm.
but the YouTube algorithm, in my opinion, in some ways, I think looks at my channel and goes, "Oh, well, he hasn't done anything for 10 years, and now he's getting people to watch." I think there's something to that, and that's why you will see over the course of time, and that's the other thing that kind of like that I never understand about the YouTube detractors and the YouTube haters. It's like, do you really think that the people who are already doing it are going away? Because we're not. And do you really think that we're the last ones? Because we're not. There are people coming down the pipe. There are probably people, there might be a person watching this right now who will be the first racing YouTuber to a million,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
it's like Ultimate 23 Dragons in the chat, and she had said, yeah, the new breed era is like what changed everything. Like the thing is like a lot of these people on Reddit and on Twitter, I don't think they get is like there is gonna come an era, maybe 3, 5, 10 years down the line that pretty much just turns everything on its head, like in 2018, and only a few people from the previous popular crowd will be the ones that people watch, and they're probably going to annoy the shit out of those people even more than we do. Completely
Oh,
honest.
that's the thing too, because I do think about that sometimes because, I get a ton of hate, and I'm thinking, man, I could be so much worse,
Yeah.
and I'm sure someday there will be. I mean, we've already had a few incidents. Let's we don't have to name names, but I'm sure you guys know at least one of the people I'm talking about. There has been some things that have happened
Hmm.
recently, and major people getting in trouble or doing something stupid, really stupid, not just
Yeah.
oh, you had a bad take, and that will happen too. It's not like the mainstream journalists or personalities or drivers or um, are like exempt from that either. I mean,
Yeah.
there's scandals that happen all the time. It's going to happen in any community.
All right. I think we'll finish off on one topic. We'll kind of combine three of them here. We can pick which you can pick which one we talk
Okay.
about first with it. So we got the fairgrounds, we got Dirt Bristol, and then one that I know that you've talked about before, the new Auto Club layout. Because I haven't got your take on that one like
Ooh.
yet. So
Well, I think mine on the old well, okay. Here is my take. Here is my original take on the Auto Club layout. I thought they are setting this up to do a California um, Hollywood finale on a short track.
mhm.
Now I'm beginning to wonder, with the shutdown in California seemingly going to go to the foreseeable future. They've already pushed back construction on the new Fontana. They delayed the race till next year. I'm beginning to wonder, again, kind of like you guys in 10 years might make a video that says, remember when they were going to change Fontana and then they just didn't do it? I think I'm beginning to think that it might not even happen. I think the 2 Mile Fontana might be the one that's might get saved by the pandemic, to be honest with you.
So my thought on this part is because California and Illinois, I mean, they're literally ranked like the bottom two states when it comes to like inexpensiveness. They're very expensive, and my grandpa was talking with some people because he knows a few people from Chicagoland, and was talking with them. Is like they were on the fritz for the longest time because the government basically started adding more and more taxes, the same way that California's been doing. And my thought was, like, one, we're going to get a short track with it, but two is that I would have to think that the upkeep and the cost of running a half-mile facility is probably so much cheaper than a 2 mile one, especially a 2 mile one that needs to probably be repaved in the next 3 years. That's sort of where my take was with that one. Like I going into it was happy with it, but I am also starting to wonder too that like with the uncertainty right now, are they really going to want to just up and change the whole damn thing if you know they don't know what's going to be going on in the state in wherever. So like that's kind of where my thinking is with it right now. Like they haven't said or done anything concrete since the announcement. Really, that's like the
Right.
big problem.
Right. And that's kind of, I mean, it could go the opposite direction too, like you mentioned, because land is so expensive there. They could just tear the whole SOB down like Ontario Motor Speedway.
Hmm.
That could also be what happens. I don't know. Again, especially there's going to be a lot of change coming in the next few years, because not only do you have now what looks like probably is going to be an economic recession, you also now have the changing face of media. Not only like what we're doing, kind of the way we kind of cover the sport, but also with the streaming. And the
Hmm.
streaming is going to be absolutely whichever series, and I've said this before, whichever series gets it right is going to be set for the next 50 years. And whichever series gets it wrong is going to be in big, big trouble.
Yeah, because like what happens if, let's say, NASCAR partners up with Hulu, and then Hulu goes under like
Right.
3 years in, and they're left with their pants down because, well, Netflix is with, like Netflix and Amazon are with F1, and YouTube is with IndyCar.
That would never happen. Who
I
said
know.
that?
Yeah, but it's like it's one of those kind of
IndyCar would
things.
go on ESPN plus 3. That's what they
Yeah,
would go with.
IndyCar has kind of like puzzled me with it because it's like there's nothing. I don't know where their thinking is with it. Like, isn't Roger Penske going to be negotiating the next deal, or like
Yes, that was something that I had heard. Yes, I can say this. I was just thinking, oh my God, am I saying something wrong? No. Is that I had heard that Roger was negotiating the deal himself.
Okay.
So that tells you how important it is. Now, do I think he's gonna go with anybody but NBC? No. I think what makes me a little bit nervous is, and people are going to say, well, streaming's the future. Okay, but when you start putting races on Peacock and sponsors start getting spooked by that, I mean, I remember back in the day when IndyCar would race on Versus, the races that were on Versus, like half the field was unsponsored.
Hmm.
So you just got to be really careful with those sort of things. So, and I don't know how I feel about particularly stuff like practice and qualifying going behind paywalls. Um, to me, I would say that there's not enough people watching IndyCar races to justify charging the fans that you already have to watch practice and qualifying. That's just my opinion. I think I think IndyCar really, to me, would just benefit from a much more open social media presence than what they currently have. They're so restricted, and they don't produce any of their own content either. They'll upload a classic race, once or twice a week, and if you're lucky, and that's it. And I'm just like, man,
Dude, that's foreign to me. Like, cause I've been so ingrained in the NASCAR side of everything. Like,
right,
I'm used to like. I made a video at the start of the pandemic, like 10, I think it was like 10 races that NASCAR needs to upload during the pandemic. And I probably didn't have any sway in any way, but like 3 months down the line, 6 of those races got uploaded in like a month and a half. Like, so it felt, I mean, it probably was already in their plans or whatever. But going back to the practice and qualifying thing, I think, and this applies to, in my opinion, all racing series, and it actually circles back to what you said about the like the build up to the Indy 500
yep,
is, I this, along with the Daytona 500 being rained out, this is part of my theory as to why ratings are actually as down as they've been for NASCAR so far, is why they've been down, but like Xfinity trucks have been up, is people don't have that normal racing fix for cup
yep,
practice that they used to have.
yep.
Like, and
You're coming to my exact. I wanted to make this point earlier and I forgot to make it, but you're absolutely right. The lack of practice and qualifying is a huge factor in the ratings going down this year. Huge.
and that I think, was it Phelps had said something like, yeah, we're looking at not doing practice and qualifying, and then I guess like Fox Sports like right after called him on the phone, yes you are, and the next day, so we're doing practice and qualifying next year. I'm like,
Right. Well, it doesn't. That's the thing that I've noticed a lot this year about NASCAR. Like, yes, the Las Vegas race was great, but leading up to it, what were we talking about?
Like
What
the
was
week
the
before.
storyline?
Like I think
Right.
stuff the week before that, like it was, yeah, Byron. Byron was like the big talking point, and then stuff with Boyer and Gordon. Which, don't get me wrong, those two together are pretty damn funny. But I
Are people really tuning in for
yeah,
Boyer and Gordon though? That's the thing.
that's the thing, and that's why that was the big problem I had, and I think where they went off track, at least Fox Sports did around 2013-14, is they tried to make it all about the wall trips. Like I'm sorry,
Right.
I'm like, and it was kind of like the old Digger stuff. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't watch for a cartoon gopher before the race. I don't watch for the wall trips, dropping a taco in Denny Hamlin's car. Like, it's funny, we remember it, it's funny, but it's like, I'm not being like, oh boy, I can't wait for the grid walk. No,
Right.
I want to know what's going on. Like, that was what was so cool about 2011, is that something in practice or qualifying or one of the earlier races in the weekend would have storylines that would go through the entire weekend. Like the hold my watch deal with Richard Childress and Kyle Busch. My grandpa quotes that to this day, and we never even got to see it happen. Like,
Well, it helped that back in the day too, in 2011, you also had Speed Channel,
yeah.
which and honestly, another thing, again, NASCAR is so smart for embracing the YouTubers. I'm not saying that we are Speed Channel, but we've kind of filled that niche where, back in the day, you would have gone to listen to the Speed Report and Wind Tunnel. Now you go, what's Eric saying about this?
Mhm.
What is Darian saying about this? What is David saying about this? Things like that. So and we give such different viewpoints. A lot of it is like, the NASCAR post. What was the NASCAR post race called? I can't even remember what it was. Victory
Oh,
Lane.
yes, yeah.
Victory
Okay.
Lane. Like, you had Jimmy Spencer and Kenny Wallace screaming at each other about some wreck that happened on lap. It's like, and YouTube kind of fills that niche. So,
Well, it's funny you say that. It's really funny you say that,
oh,
because in 2000, between 2018 and 19, when we were revamping the podcast the first time, we came to MDK, old Jet Kraus,
right.
uh, and we said, hey, we'd like you to do an intro for the podcast for us. Can you make it as close to the old Speed Channel as possible, even to the colors? And so, like, we had this big red intro, and people were like, wow, this reminds me of back, like, in Speed days. And I'm like, that was the plan.
Oh, I will tell you straight up, I 100% rip Paul Page off on my IndyCar, like I make my IndyCar coverage, as especially like the Indy 500 stuff, especially the Indy 500 stuff. I just completely rip off the ABC broadcast from the 90s. Like, that's exactly what I'm going for. Like, if you're like, yeah, that's kind of, yeah, it's like, that's exactly,
Well,
but that's the stuff, what's so cool about what we get to do is we got inspired by the good stuff, right? We got inspired by we watched because either racing was presented to us in a really good way, or we just kind of know in the bottom of our soul, because we just have been watching since we were in diapers,
mhm.
how to present this sport. And so that's something that's cool, I think, about YouTube in particular, is
Well,
we can, and the other thing too is now we have access to all this old stuff too.
yeah.
So even if you didn't like experience, say, the 2007 NASCAR season in real time, you can go back and watch every single damn race, every single practice session, there's a lot of the wind tunnels and pre-race
Yes.
shows that are out there. You can just go watch all that stuff, learn all this stuff, and kind of learn, especially if you're a YouTuber, how to integrate the best elements of those broadcasts into your content.
Well, and it's something that, because a lot of people are like, oh, a lot of these people just talk about the old seasons and stuff. But what a lot of,
People want to watch it.
yeah, and what a lot of people, what a lot of people I think need to, especially the ones who are pushing for all new age all the time. I agree that we need to move forward. Like, and I would say I'm relatively an old school fan. I won't say I'm like 100%. I'm not the people who are like, NASCAR died when Dale died. I'm not that type. But like, I remember talking to some people that worked in NASCAR, and they're like, there's stuff we can, like, if we'll listen and try and change, but it's like we can't do some stuff. Like, they're like, trust me, if we could resurrect Dale Earnhardt, we would have done it. Like, but that's something I think, though, going back to some of these, like, new age minded people, and I think this goes into all of auto racing as well, not just NASCAR, is that racing fans are inherently nostalgic. Even if the
Hmm.
stuff they're nostalgic about sucks. Like, people are like, man, I miss how the plate races were back in the 90s. And I went back and watched them. I'm like, this sucks. There's, like, it's just Dale Earnhardt running away from the field. Like, yeah, I like it because I like Earnhardt. But, like, if I'm being objective, it's boring as shit.
But people like, but that's exactly it. See, people liked Earnhardt, so if Earnhardt ran
Mm-hmm.
away with a race, they loved the race. Like the character was larger than life, and so
Yes.
it is weird because I think in some ways I almost want to do a video on this. I think in some ways the 2000 Winston 500 was the greatest NASCAR race ever, but it also completely broke the sport. It's like it set the bar so high that it could never ever be topped.
Oh my god. And you're right. And that's the thing, is like everyone, the problem is everyone compares everything in NASCAR, and a lot of times they even compare other racing series to that era of NASCAR of the
Mhm.
90s and the early to mid 2000s. Like, it was like around 2000. I granted, I hadn't watched racing nonstop and until I was 7 in 2005, but I grew up around it. My grandpa had, he had every kind of racing that you could think of on, especially NASCAR, but lots of NHRA, IndyCar. I mean, the stray F1 broadcast would be on, even though he wasn't a great fan of it. He had the 24 hour. I remember, I don't know when it stopped, but I remember he had the 24-hour race on, and he was like, it was, the TV was on 24 hours. Like, if there was coverage, it was on. Um, but it's like the bar got set so high, and people, and the already nostalgic mindset of racing fans got so set in that way that now, like, anything that especially NASCAR does immediately gets compared. Like I personally think that, and granted, Dale Jr. goes against this on me, so you can't say I'm a blind fan, anyone out there. Um, I personally think that the current rules package, the slowed down one that hasn't had as many flips, I think that one is just as good as the early 2000s plate package. It's the driver issue. The drivers, I think, are the issue. The like that's I think Eric and I both agree on that one. I do want to know what you think about that before we go to the other two tracks. I think that it's younger drivers who have grown up in an insulated and safer environment racing through the ranks
Yeah.
compared to, I mean, in 2000, 2001, every single one of those drivers probably had a half a dozen to a dozen friends that died in racing.
Yep.
Whereas, there's drivers now, especially in the Truck and Xfinity series, but even in the Cup series, that were born after Dale Earnhardt died. Like, they grew up in a world where nobody ever died in racing.
That's a huge factor to it. The lack of respect in racing, I think, and we are, unfortunately, and we've been lucky that we haven't lost these drivers, but the Ryan Newman crash and the Roman Grosjean crash, have woken some people up in both F1 and NASCAR, because I do hear that a lot. Is that people have the attitude that no one can ever die in those series. And I'm like, oh man, you're really setting yourself up for disappointment someday. The But I think there is definitely a factor to the drivers. Um, two things on that. Number one, like you mentioned, the lack of respect causes crashes like we saw in lap 14 of the Daytona 500 this year.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you also have drivers now who are just willing to sit there and wait till the end of the race
Yeah.
if it means they're going to get a top 5 or a top 10. And I think part of that is I listened to the Dale Jr. download, and he talked about it, I think, with the LaJoys, Randy and Corey. And the thing that Junior said was the big ass spoiler is a big ass problem,
Mm-hmm.
because they were talking about it, and particularly Randy LaJoy brought this up. When there's two current gen NASCARs with the 3-foot spoiler in the back, even if you get a run and you pull out, there's so much air resistance going over the back of that car and hitting that spoiler that it's just like putting a parachute out, and you're not going to be able to actually complete the pass. So what happens is you have to do that thing that we've kind of seen recently where they go into the corner. Denny Hamlin's like the beast at this.
Mm-hmm.
They go into the corner and they slam down to the inside, and they hope that they bring 3 or 4 guys with them so they can kind of go up and slide up in front of just one car ahead of them. And it's, you know,
it is a problem. I'm not saying it's all on the drivers. I just think part of it too is that you see it's the same crash over and over again.
right. Yeah.
That's the part that, like, at Talladega last year, before the crazy finish, which, just letting everyone know, hashtag abolish the all-line rule. Before that whole debacle happened, it was great racing, but then it was just crash after crash after crash, and it was the same stupid moves that I saw in the Daytona race in August, and those moves were the same stupid moves that were being done in the 500 earlier in the year. And it's like, as much as the rules package does cause these things, I think it also is up to the drivers to know, hey, these are your limits. And I don't think these, like, I feel like a lot of the younger ones have like this invincibility kind of aura about them when it comes to this kind of racing. You see, like, they make these, like, steel balls moves out there.
Joey.
Yeah, immediately I was thinking of him. But there was a year, like, Alex Bowman goes into the corner on the bottom, and I think, like, Byron and Johnson got a run on him, and he just hooks it right up into the track, crashes half the damn field. It's like, that's not a package problem. That's a driver error. Like, and that's, you didn't see that even when the package, like, in 2001, 2000. I mean, even 2002 through about 05, 06 had those huge runs, and you didn't see that because, like you said, there was more respect back then. There's a lack of respect now with the drivers, and I wouldn't be as upset about it if it wasn't for the fact that fans are now getting the same mindset. Like, I see fans today, and they watch old races, and they're like, why did so and so, like, not just wait till 5 to go? And it's like, I mean, they're racing. like Dale Earnhardt is always going to be pedal to the metal going forward, but at the same time, at plate tracks especially, he didn't make these dumbass moves that Joey Logano has made.
That's a great point you bring up about Dale Sr., because I think one thing that's different about the mid 2000s plate package versus the one now is that going to the back wasn't a death sentence back then. In fact, guys would literally just, if they saw something developing, they just go to the back and they just whatever. Because for whatever reason, and again, I'm not an engineer, I don't know why the current cars do the things that they do, and the cars that were running in 2002 didn't do this. But back in the day, if you got shuffled out and you had a great car or were a great driver like Dale Sr. was, you could weave your way up back through the pack. I mean, you could do it in a lap or two if you got the right runs. Mm-hmm. And I think nowadays, if you get shuffled out of line, particularly in the Daytona 500, where guys are so protective of running up front at that race because it pays so well, I just wonder if it was less of a problem once you're in the back, once you have to deal with all that dirty air, once you have to deal with the fact that anytime you get alongside somebody, they are going to side draft the hell out of you if you try to pass them, and you're both going to go right backwards. I don't know what they can do. I mean, the big problem, I think, with the cars now, and I hope they fix this with the next gen car, is that the current cars seem so over-engineered at this point. Mm-hmm. They seem like they've added so much to the cars. They've done so much to them. There's so much aero on them now that I'm just like, what? Why? Like, was this really the best solution, to create?
They're so plastered to the ground too. Like, especially like it took me off guard. I think in 2019 it was during Speed Weeks or Speed Week or whatever the hell they're calling it now. Like, I was watching practice, and I'm like, why is the back bumper dragging on the ground? And I pointed out on Twitter, and then I full credit to Real Radman on this. He found pictures of the back bumpers from like 2014 to 19, and you can just see them every single picture closer, closer, closer until now. It's like you basically have them as close to the ground now as you have the front bumper. It's just
Well, that's like one of the only things that's kind of open to the teams too, isn't it? That's like the one thing they can really adjust is the ride heights. And I remember I feel like it was like maybe 19 where they got the cars off the ground. I do remember there was one year where it really looked like, I think maybe it was 18, where they were like really dragging. They got rid of it for like a race, and then it came back because I think didn't Stuart Haas like completely cheat their
yes.
cars up at Talladega?
Yeah, they were 1, 2, 3, 4 the entire damn day. Well, and I remember I made a video about it, and on the show later, I made a point to say it. It's like people are like, this is terrible. They've ruined plate racing forever, and I'm just like, this happens all the time. Like, this isn't new. Roush 2012, Hendrick, in 05, 06, 07. DEI. I mean, DEI, like, I think it was Tony Uri Sr. and Dale Jr. literally admitted, like, yeah, we did this, and they just never checked it. And I'm like, that was a secret? Was, like, they just overlooked it? That, like, that was your secret?
The biggest question I had about the Stuart Haas thing was, why on earth did you they must have had a rule change coming or something, because I was like, why would you do that in the fall Talladega race? Bring those cars to the Daytona 500 and go out there and finish 1, 2, 3, 4. Just run away, lap the field. That's what I would have done. I don't know why they did.
Well, and the worst part about it is like, I think 2 of them ran out of fuel on the last
They
lap.
did.
I'm like,
yeah.
You had literally the best running single organization probably in at least since the DEI days, and fuel mileage was your undoing at Talladega.
Right.
It's just, I love racing. It's stuff like that makes me love racing. Okay, so 2 other things.
Okay.
Bristol Dirt and Fairgrounds. Where do you want to go with that one?
We'll go with Bristol Dirt first.
Okay.
Because I feel like we should end on a positive. I feel like Bristol Dirt's going to be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
I feel the more, when they announced, here's the thing. I think there's a reason Cup stopped going to dirt in the 70s. And we are going to find out why. I think 40 Cup cars on that track. I mean, here's the other thing too. I was watching iRacing. I think it was Moonhead, and they were running the Outlaw cars, and those things are going so damn fast on that track. I'm like, I don't think it's gonna. I think what it's gonna be, and I have said this since they announced it. What I think it's going to be is a lot of Cup guys who aren't familiar with the dirt are going to be like harmlessly spitting out kind of at the back, and it's just going to be yellow after yellow after yellow after yellow after yellow. And I don't think what may save the race is you're going to get like Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell doing a chili bowl at the end, and people are just going to forget that the rest of the race sucked. But I think it's going to be a disaster, whether it's a unentertaining disaster or whether it's an entertaining disaster. That remains to be seen. But to me, and I get that the spring Bristol race was dying anyway. They had to do something with it. Was this the solution?
So I can't remember who it was that told me, but I got kind of a wink through the grapevine on it that this was not a NASCAR decision in any way. This was Fox Sports basically being like, yeah, we need to make this like look better for us on TV. What do you think about, let's put them on dirt. Let's like from what it sounded like, from what some teams have said, is like this wasn't NASCAR being like, you know what? Because like I assume NASCAR probably has entertained the thought of putting the Cup cars on dirt, especially if they can capture and keep the magic of the first few Eldora years. But man, I'm looking at it, and I hope to God you're wrong about it being a complete clusterfuck, and then the finish makes everyone love it. Because
dude,
this is
I'm telling you, that's such a NASCAR
now.
thing, dude.
I can't stand that about modern NASCAR fans. And if you're in the chat and you think this way, like it's not something personal, but it's like so for instance, I was at the Clash this year, and that crash at the end was right in front of me. That finish was all right in front of me, and I that last lap I loved it. Our last couple laps even I loved it. And I've heard the TV coverage made it better, but man, being at the track that race was so damn boring. It was horrible.
Daytona. Okay, so here's the dirty little secret. I hope this doesn't get me in trouble because I do want to keep going to the Rolex 24. But the dirty little secret is the Daytona road course sucks to spectate at.
Yeah,
That's the unfortunate.
it's bad.
Like going there, the TV does a way better job of because the problem is it's such a big track that the car, like, you have to have a lot of cars to make it interesting. And the Clash had the problem of the field, once it spreads out, you've got a 4-mile road course where the cars are going to be in various areas around them. And when you've got a disparity in talent like you have in NASCAR, where Chase and Christopher Bell and Truex and a few other guys are really, really good at road courses, and then the other half of the field is really, really bad at road courses, that also kind of hurts the show because you don't have a fully competitive field either.
Dude, and what was bad is I was over on the turn 4 side of the grandstand, so like right near the chicane.
Right.
And so to Daytona's credit, like when it's a plate, like when it's the oval plate race, it's really cool to see in person, especially like my camera, like on my phone, because that's what I use for all my YouTube stuff for the most part, other than live streaming, can zoom in too. So like if I want to really see it, I can just zoom in on my phone and see it. It's honestly it's pretty good as a spectator event with that. But it's like you said with the road course, there's so much in the infield that's been built up behind the pits too, that you can't see any of the infield road course if you're sitting in turn 4 or in turn 1. You can't see a damn thing. And that's how it was for us. Is like I'm trying to record it, and the only stuff I could see clearly was from turn 3 down around the front and down through the tri-oval. It's the only thing I could see clearly, and then a little bit in the infield section. And it was like, oh, go ahead, man.
No, by the way, I was just going to say that if you think the Indianapolis road course is any better to watch a race at, I've got a bridge to sell you. You know, oh my God.
I really hope we have access for that one.
Unless you're on top of the pagoda, you're not gonna get a good view anywhere. I'm just throwing that out.
But at least access, I'll get more than most people.
Right,
track.
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But I that is something. Okay, so I was wondering, because you've been to more road course races than I have at different facilities. Is that just a road course thing in general? Because I'm going to COTA. Okay, I'm going to COTA.
COTA might be a little bit. I have not been personally to COTA. The thing that I've heard about COTA that's different than, say, like Road Atlanta or Road America or Sebring is that, or Watkins Glen even, is that COTA was built as a modern Formula One track. So it's going to have fences in places. It's not going to be. So the best road courses to me are ones that were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And while they have been modernized and had safety improvements and all that, it's not totally modern in that you don't have catch fences around the entire track. Even at Watkins Glen, especially in like the boot, which NASCAR doesn't run. But if you go to the sports car race there, you go in the boot and the cars come all the way down and you're literally standing up on this hill. There's no catch fence. You can see over it. It's great. The thing about Circuit of the Americas is I have not been there personally, but from what I understand, you don't really have the access you would have at an older style road course, an older style American road course, purpose built, because it has to cater to Lewis Hamilton not getting bothered by 100,000 people 24/7. And our road courses in America that aren't Circuit of the Americas are much more products of the old style of racing where it was guys showing up with cars on the back of their trailers. That's why everybody loves going to American road courses. But at the same time, hey, GP Laps is in the chat. But at the same time, where was I going with that? I got distracted by GP Laps. Oh, no, they're like the purpose-built road courses in America that are older are much more spectator friendly than Rovals or new road courses. That's what I was
Okay.
going to say.
Because I got my tickets in turn one. I want to say it was. I can't remember where it was. I got because I got them like they went on sale, and I just got the ones that I looked and saw were at the top of the hill. I was like, if I'm gonna see
Yeah,
everything, I should be at the top of the hill.
right.
Um,
Exactly.
I think that's turn one, but I'd have to double check.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I I said even if I can't see anything, even if I'm bored as hell with the race, like since 2018, I've been on the Coda train where I've been like, this needs to be in Cup. This needs to be in Cup. We need to at least get one race on it in Cup. And I remember like back in 2018, I had people like laugh me out of the damn stream when I said it. They're like, that's never gonna happen. That's stupid. And then it happened, and everyone's like, hey, that's awesome. And I'm just like, man, I wish you would have thought that 3 years ago. Um, but real quick, going back to this shows how much we don't want to talk about Dirt Bristol.
Right, right. We're talking about Coda, but we're talking about Coda over Dirt Bristol. I just want to let the record show.
Dude, I think you're right though about it. It's gonna be an awful race for the first 95%. It's gonna be an awesome finish where probably Larson and Bell will crash each other, and then whoever's the third best dirt racer that day is gonna win. And
Clip it, Carnation.
everyone's gonna say this is a classic race. 90% approval on the Gluck poll. Like, oh, dude, last year I think GN put it in the chat that Kentucky, because it was right before the Bristol All-Star race, so we were covering it in person with each other for the podcast, and we're all like, yeah, the first 265 laps sucked, and then it was a great finish, and it's like, let's see what everyone rated it, and it's like 88% positive, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, we're at the time, thank God I was wrong about this one. I'm like, we're never gonna get rid of Kentucky, are we? But no, I am. Oh God! The more I see, I saw a lot of people put this sentiment in the chat. The more I hear about this race, the more I'm just like, I don't want. I like it's. I am jealous of Danny because he bought tickets and I didn't because I thought, oh, it's not gonna be all that special. Now I realize it's gonna be special because it's gonna be like one of the worst damn races ever, but in the funniest way. Like I think Harvick said, he's like, it's gonna be the longest dirt race put to record.
Well, and the other thing is that with 40 Cup cars going around that thing, and with as fast as it's going to be, that place is going to turn into a dust bowl.
Yeah.
It's going to suck to be a spectator. By the way, that's going to be a great race to wear a mask at.
Yep.
I'm just throwing that one out there.
I went. They brought World of Outlaws to, because I live like right down the road from the Rockford Speedway, and they brought World of Outlaws there. I think in 2018, and I have friends who are big race fans. Like one of them, dude, I'm so damn jealous of this guy. He went to the 98 500.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Or no, he wanted. I should say he wanted to. My grandpa went to the 98 500, but it's like he went to like all these different like old races in the 90s and 2000s. I forgot which ones, but it was like just classic after classic. But he's like, yeah, make sure you got goggles or something. I'm like, goggles? Like, we're going to a race, not a swimming pool. And he goes, you never been to a dirt race, have you? And I'm like, no, this is my first one. Why? And he goes, bring goggles and maybe something over your mouth. Well, I'm like, why? And he goes, just trust me, you'll see. And we go in there, and we had to sign a waiver to sit in the first 3 rows because the catch fence is about as tall as I am. And it was funny because when they went out for the heat races, somebody flipped coming out of 4. The damn back wheel fell off, went 40 feet up in the air and bounced over the turn 1 wall and hit a billboard. And I'm like, man, we're fucked if they crash.
Right.
But,
I mean, I went to last year. The first race I went to after the lockdown was at Port Royal in Pennsylvania, and it was the first time I'd seen a sprint car go out of the park. Those sprint car, I mean, the sprint cars they crash the most violently. Mm-hmm. It's when you see those things flip in person. I remember, I went to a race at Kokomo, Indiana. And because in Indiana we run wingless. Well, I'm not in Indiana right now, but I'm a Hoosier at heart. In Indiana we run wingless sprints, and those things crash worse because they don't have the cushion of the wing. So when those things crash, it is just like the most ugly looking thing ever.
Dude, what was even worse when I went is the Badger race they had. We didn't get a freaking lap in for a half hour because they kept flipping. We literally they waved the green flag and it was like that. Okay, not meaning any malintent towards anyone here, nothing malicious here. I hate that I have to say this, but I've been attacked so many times. I'm not taking the chance. It was like the episode of Family Guy where they said that NASCAR was in China and they all crashed at the start. That's what it was. It literally was that. There were people flipping over the car, like over another car, and they just kept going. And dude, I was in for such a culture shock with dirt racing. And I had such a new appreciation for it because for so long, anytime I talked to a dirt race fan about racing, I'd bring up NASCAR, and they're just like, "Oh, asphalt racing." They're like, "You watch asphalt racing?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's on TV." And it's like, "Dude, you need to watch dirt racing." And I'm like,
Right.
"Okay." Like, I remember I was like 2017. Someone said that to me, and I'm like, "You mean like the ones that Tony Stewart killed that guy in?" They're like,
Oh no.
well, not that specific one, but dirt racing like that. And I'm like, okay. Um, no, man, it was like I love it. I want to go to another one, but I see these NASCAR drivers going on it. I just if they thought Quinn Half was a problem on asphalt, I don't know how the hell
Oh,
they
I
think
didn't
he's
even
gonna
think.
do on dirt.
Well, that goes right back to my what I was saying. I think a lot of those guys are just gonna, they're gonna go into turn one. They're just gonna do. I mean, they're not even gonna crash. It's just gonna go nice little lazy spin. They'll stall the
Mm-hmm.
car, put it out. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
god, it's gonna be it's gonna be so bad.
I want to cheer the chat up. This is not dirt racing, but it is asphalt racing. The craziest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't believe that they were getting away with this. Is I went to Anderson Speedway in Indiana, and it's a concrete. I think it's a three quarter mile oval banked, and they were running these little go karts, but they essentially were mini World of Outlaws cars, and they had kids in them, and they were literally bumper to bumper 200-mile-an-hour pace lap pack racing in these things. I was like, we are going to see a little kid die. I'm like, this is the craziest effing thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe they're allowed to do this.
I
I'm
want to
like,
see that so bad now.
I don't remember what it's called. Maybe the chat will tell us. I think they're called. I don't think they're called bandoleros. They're called something. But it's nuts. I want to go back there and see that because that was something to see. I'll tell you what. That short track racing hits different sometimes.
It does, dude. But I keep thinking about this. I'm like, so Larson and Bell kick ass at dirt tracks, and they're gonna be definitely contenders as long as nothing crazy happens. But man, I see like Harvick, for instance, like openly says he sucks on dirt, and I'm like, think about this. If Harvick, most tracks, if you're like a half second off, it's gonna be a while before you get lapped. At least it's like if Harvick's a half second off at Dirt Bristol, he's gonna probably get lapped within like the first stage. Now think of the Rick Ware cars, dude. This is like
Well, aren't they bringing like some ringers in? Didn't I see that Rick Ware was bringing in Chris Wyndham maybe from Sprint Cars?
yeah, they're bringing in ringers. It's just my thing is like I feel like the one positive because I do better than I used to be in the last couple of years. I do try and find a positive. I think the one positive is you're going to really find out how much of a difference it is equipment versus driver in NASCAR with the Dirt Bristol race. Aside from I think Larson and Bell, they're probably going to be setting the pace. But for the rest of the field, you're going to find out just I think how much talent versus equipment really makes a difference for. Because I'll be real, I wouldn't be surprised if Bubba Wallace actually comes up through there and is a top 5 contender. Because I mean he's shown at Eldora he's good on dirt, you know. I wouldn't
That'll blow the boomers' minds.
dude. I would laugh like hell if they're like, we're going back to our roots. Who won?
And
Bubba Wallace. I would be like,
that would be a shock. Like Larson wins on a 1.5 mile, and then Bubba wins the dirt race. That would be that. Who had that in 2021 bingo?
Dude, I would seriously be like supplying the salt mines for like supplying fodder for the salt mines of the boomers on that one. Like I have no dog in this fight at all. Like I literally said on the podcast with Eric and Darian this week, I was like, because like Danny roots for Bowman, whereas the rest of us root for Stories. Like that's me. But kind of going into another Tennessee track really quick to end off on topics,
Yes.
then we'll get the last super chats. Nashville Fairgrounds. I want to ask you just what do you think if you had to give a 0% chance to a 100% chance with the confidence or lack of you have now? What do you think of in the next 5 years the fairgrounds even being on the truck schedule?
Oh, on the truck schedule?
Even the truck, yeah, just any of them. Because I have a feeling it's gonna start off like I did a video on Vegas, and it's like they started first with like the trucks and Xfinity, and then built up as they went
Hmm.
and built to Cup. And I'm just like, because I'm some people brought up a good point that politicians change. You know, who the
Right.
mayor is now is not probably going to be the mayor in 5-10 years when this stuff is really going into effect. And I we have I mean Eric brought up a great point that a lot of us kind of blew it out of proportion. Like it's a letter of intent. It's not law of the land. Like I think they have a deadline in July. So I'm wondering like, what's your confidence level with it? Because I'm sort of like leaning confident, but I can't say that I'm like hardline confident on it.
I would say, here's the thing. I think if they get the renovations done, I think they're 90% there if they get the renovations done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing that I would say is that I think if the fairgrounds happens, I think it will happen sooner than we think it's going to happen. I would say, like, again, depending if the renovations are done end of 2022, what is saying they don't get a cup date in 23? Because there's already the Nashville market on the schedule right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't imagine it would be that hard to move from Nashville Superspeedway to Nashville Fairgrounds.
Well, I think the Super Speedway is signed in for a 4-year deal right now.
So that would take us to 25, 24 or 25.
I think let's yeah, through 24. So 25 I
Okay.
think would be I believe it's a 4 year. It might be 5. I'm not it's somewhere in that range. The chat will
Okay.
correct me when it
Well,
catches up into
I
mid.
mean, there you go. I mean, so I think that's I mean, but also this is like a joint venture with SMI, right?
Yes, Bristol Motor Speedway. I think part of the arrangement was Bristol was going to like supply $1 million a year for different stuff, and that um, they also agreed. I think that like a percentage of the money from the ticket sales goes straight to the city, and the city doesn't like basically the city gets the good end of the deal here.
Right.
They don't really have to pay anything for it. My worry is just I know we've had this worry here at the Speedway up in Rockford is the people that are it's too loud. I live next to the track. It's too loud because for some reason they put that stock. You moved next to a racetrack and you bitch because it's too loud.
Well, I
Um,
mean, how much do they use the fairgrounds every year? Do they even
uh,
use the track right now?
yes. I went to a race last summer after the All Star race in Bristol. I went with Danny and his wife Claudia and Darian, and they had I think it was a Cars tour was there, and it was freaking awesome, dude. Like, it's I like to say it's a happy medium between Bristol and Martinsville. It has the
Hmm.
longer straights of Martinsville, but it has about 18 to 20 degrees of banking, so it's right between the banking of those two. It's a really good facility. I mean, it's going to need a ton of renovation. The stands need to be redone for because it holds 15,000 now, so they're going to have to at least add 25,000 there. Needs
Yep.
safer barriers. Needs a pit road. Like
Needed a
it,
fence last night. I looked at a photo.
the backstretch does, yes. The backstretch. I mean, it's very old school.
Yeah.
But the facility itself, it reminded me of walking into Martinsville the first time.
Hmm.
Honestly, like the outside did. Um, I like I said, I lean positive just because if the politicians in the city are behind it, and if Dale Jr. My thing is if Dale Jr.'s public about it, that
Right.
immediately is like
That's
like he's not gonna say shit if it's going bad. He's gonna be like, "Yeah, so we tried this, it didn't go through. That sucks." But it's like this. If this letter of intent to me felt like a marketing thing, honestly.
right. And Dale Jr. doesn't usually attach himself to things that are just absolutely embarrassing. Sometimes he does take L's. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, I think Dale Jr. rarely has. I mean, Dale Jr. rarely has PR blunders.
Yeah,
So I think this would be a big blunder if he came out and said, "Wow, we're making it happen," and then it doesn't happen.
yeah.
Chip does say something here in the chat that I did want to bring up because when I mentioned the Bristol connection,
Mm-hmm.
my immediate thought is especially if the dirt race flops at Bristol, if Bristol already has an investment in this, what is stopping them from moving one of the Bristol dates to the fairgrounds?
Yeah, that's something that Danny actually brought up with us after the show on Wednesday. Is he was thinking that was the main goal, because he's been at the Bristol races before COVID in the spring, and he was telling us at the All Star race, he's like, yeah, this is like double, if not more, than the people at the spring race back in 2019. Like he was saying that it got very embarrassing even as like a fan sitting there for how low it was, and like we were talking about earlier, like optics right now are everything for all of racing. Like it looked 40,000 people at Nashville is going to look a hell of a lot better than 40,000 people at Bristol. I wouldn't be surprised. I also would not be surprised if everybody then basically exploded angrily on Twitter about it, because the prized Bristol race they always loved that they never went to is taken off the schedule.
Well, it's already. It's as far as I'm concerned, the spring Bristol race is gone.
Yeah,
It's not. It's gone. They already did it, guys. It's the dirt race is not going to be the same thing. And here's the other thing that I want to talk about Bristol. Now that I was thinking about it, what in the hell is the logic of moving the All Star race to Texas? Especially after you already pulled it off running it at Bristol and it was pretty decent.
pleasing Eddie Gossage to get Coda, I think, was what they did, because I think they had an agreement, if I'm not mistaken, that like no other track within like 300 or 400 miles of Texas Motor Speedway in the state could run.
Right.
And then I think that part of the bargaining chip with that is, if you give one of your points races to Coda, we'll give you the All-Star race. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I mean, I remember they were hyping up some big like announcement or change for it. And then the announcement was that they were running at Texas, and they announced that after the schedule was announced, and I'm like, Eddie, that's all you got? Like, dude, we're going to need a little more.
Texas is doing all sorts of stupid stuff this year. To bring it back to the IndyCar thing, they're doing a doubleheader, 2 races. I'm like,
dude, I watched the
Indy. Not that.
I did watch the IndyCar race at Texas last year, and I remember it got hyped to hell. Like it got so hyped up. I think that was the race right after we had Colton on the show.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I watched it, and I'm like, is this what IndyCar says is good now? Like it's decent.
No,
it's all right, I guess. But
I don't know what they were thinking with the PJ1, because the 2019 race was actually really pretty good, especially for like the modern Texas, where it's not back when Texas had 2 symmetrical turns with the same banking and the same radius. Those races were awesome for IndyCar, more or less every year. And 19 was the first year it really kind of came back to, wow, Texas IndyCar is kind of exciting, because they had that finish with where Colton tried to pass Dixon and they both wrecked, and then Rossi somehow the most unbelievable. I mean, Rossi saves the car literally every time he goes to an oval, but one of the most probably the best save he's ever had was at Texas, and then he and Pagano battled to the finish, so that was a pretty good race. 20, it was one groove, Dixon domination. Yeah, that was really, as an IndyCar fan, I'm like, all right, network NBC, first race back on an oval. This is going to be a great opportunity for IndyCar, and they put a snoozer on.
Dude, I remember you hyped that thing up, and like I was even getting hyped for it. And again, like I said, I'm at the very.
They should pay me for the amount I hype their freaking crap. Then I have to take the crap when they don't get to put on a good.
Oh my dude, I've noticed that. Like we all get a lot of shit on this website, but it's like you have entire communities of websites that just go after you. Like,
wow, I'll tell you what, that on Sunday, that was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. I was like, whoa. Twitter has gone completely bananas.
See, because
Completely bananas.
it wasn't even like that when like in 2018. Like again, I'd been on Twitter since Junior got on, just because I was, I was a member of Junior Nation, and I was 100% a Junior sheep. I would do like any, like he's like, listen to J. Cole, download the album. I'm like, what's he do though? Like I nothing. I like, it was nothing compared to now though. Like
Right.
it was like mid to late 2019 it started getting bad. There started to be a lot of the I need to be careful how I phrase this or I'll end up on a damn, age tweets or something. Um, there was a lot of more politically contrarian views that were being flung around. I'll put it like that.
Mhm.
Not to say that I don't personally, I don't care what people believe, what they live, whatever. I'm like in the literal sense, I'm completely libertarian with that. You do what the hell you want as long as you don't mess with me. Well, now in the last year, between the election, the Bubba Wallace stuff, the Confederate flag,
COVID.
COVID, yeah, I think COVID is like like if this is a giant explosion, COVID was like a natural gas leak, and then
Right.
they just need a spark. There's another
Yep.
one of those
Yep.
sparking cars, and it's like ever since then, man. It's like, listen, I'm every time that some big change happens or whatever, I'm like, you know what, cool, go for it. Like I'm just gonna watch it for the racing. Now it's getting to the point where I have people coming in my DMs telling me I have to say stuff, and I'm like, now it's affecting me, and
Right.
now it's one of
Right.
those things where it's like, now it's pissing me off. Like I don't want to, like, half the time, like people. I remember Darian being like, dude, why don't you tweet through the week? And I'm like, because it pisses me off. Like I don't want. I'm like, it's bad enough I have to put up with these people Friday through Sunday. I want the rest of my week to be in peace. It's the reason I only tweet it when a video goes up. Because I always got told that NASCAR Instagram was bad, like around 2017,
It used
18.
that was insane. But you know what? Here's the thing about NASCAR Instagram. It wasn't. It was essentially just a bunch of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't like organized. Like what's happening now, and actually, there's other people doing videos about this right now, like on other sections of YouTube, which I've kind of been watching, and I've kind of been like, that sounds familiar. But there's this phenomenon on Twitter right now called Stan culture. I don't know if you know what this
Yes,
is.
I know what it is.
Okay, so what happened? Part of what happened on Sunday to me, what I realized was a bunch of stands coming after me,
Mm-hmm.
and but apparently that's what Twitter. So Twitter is a lot of refugees from Tumblr because Tumblr
Yeah,
shut down, and all of like the oh god, I can't remember the K-pop fans, right?
yeah, yeah.
A bunch of K-pop
Yeah.
fans came onto Twitter, and then all the K-pop fans started arguing with this is the weirdest thing. This sounds like so weird. I love 2021, guys. It's so much fun to navigate life. So all the K-pop people started arguing with one another, and then they all started arguing with other fandoms, and so other fandoms got on each side of the K-pop like fight, and then it just kept going from there. And then it started mixing with the political side of Twitter, which the political side of Twitter was already completely divided and completely toxic. So then you have these two big like amoebas like eating every other account up and every other discussion up, and it's just all seeping into one another. And I guess now it's finally hit racing Twitter, where you literally just can't, if you step wrong and somebody who's influential in one of these spheres doesn't like you, the stands come after you.
Yep.
And it's changed my opinion of like what kind of content I want to put on Twitter, or what kind of how much effort I want to put into putting tweets out. I'm
Yeah.
like, I could just put the stuff on the community tab on YouTube, and that's essentially Twitter. It's the
Dude, when I was at the race. I like doing live tweeting during the races just because it's fun, and it even though I might have like show up once every few weeks on like age tweets for a bad take, it's still cool to have like an archive of what I was thinking at that moment. And when I was at Daytona, I just was like, you know what? Because I was getting pissed off with the dumb arguments that people were having about the racing and about Bubba and about social issues, and I'm like, listen, I'm at the race. I don't care. Like, I'm just like, if they're not talking about it on the radio, if they're not making a big thing in pre-race, like, don't bother me with that crap.
Wait, which race was this?
The 500. There was
Oh,
there was dumb.
really?
Well,
That was happening during the Daytona 500.
well, rain delay.
Oh, right. Okay.
But so like I went into that week because I know I was going to be there with a bunch of friends. I was going to be there with my girlfriend. I just wanted to have fun. And so what I did is I'm just like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to film everything that happens and then just put it on Twitter. So like, and it turned out well for me. So that I'm like, that's just what I'm going to do because I'm going to be going to more races in the future. I'm just going to be like posting stuff from the track instead because how the hell can you make a damn issue out of me posting Brandon Jones sliding through the infield grass at Daytona? Like, you can't.
Just wait. They'll find something.
They'll find, yeah, they'll find something.
Well, look at what happened to Moonhead at Bristol last year.
Oh God, yeah.
Remember that?
When he interviewed I love Chase Elliott.
Right, that was amazing content, but he got canceled for it. So it's like, and
it's like, dude, it's. I'll be real. Like Dale Jr. got on Reddit, and he like was publicly on Reddit, and like they've cleaned up their. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still put up some stuff about us. Like I'm not saying you should go on there, but like you should probably stay away.
I want to do an AMA. That would be fun,
dude. That would be amazing. But ever since Dale Jr. made himself public on there, I noticed like all of them, like a lot of these accounts that were like assholes, either got banned or shut the hell up real quick. Because they all knew that like they were gonna be seen by Dale Jr. And it was
a shame. It's a shame Twitter doesn't have the same Dale Jr. kind of.
It's like I saw a few people put in the chat, and don't get me wrong, I think YouTube can be very cancerous, and
100%.
We've all been guilty of putting out like ass takes, just terrible takes. I put out a few of them to say the least. But thing is like. At least on here, the majority of us own up to a lot of them. Like, I've had some people on Twitter bring up stuff from, like, 8 months ago, and I'm just like, dude, I made a video, like, a month ago explaining how, like, okay, I went too far in some areas. Like, I was like that George Lucas clip. I mean, I went too far in some areas. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some saint of journalistic integrity, I don't think. Like, I'm not saying I'm bad, but I am not the gold standard by any means. But it's like, on YouTube at least, you can just turn off videos or people you don't like and just ignore it. Like, on Twitter, people you don't like just pop up if somebody likes one of their tweets. Like, I don't know how Facebook is. I've never been on Facebook. I never will be on Facebook. I've heard it's awful. But it's like Instagram. Like you're saying, it's a bunch of kids. I went on Instagram, and I'm just like, what was the big deal? Like,
they changed Instagram. That's why. What they did with Instagram, which killed Instagram, was they got rid of the linear timeline. So it used to be that you could go on Instagram and it was like Twitter. And so people would post photos. Like if drama would happen, everybody would post a photo about the most recent drama or screenshots of stuff that was happening on there. And that's how stuff would spread. It's exactly like it is on Twitter right now. But they changed Instagram and the problem is Keemstar is entertaining. Like there's not like some of the drama in early 2020 to me was exciting, or not exciting, but I found like some of the Twitter drama before COVID.
Vegas.
Yes, that was one of the things. Like I found that entertaining. Now, did I like the complete crap that was like getting thrown at Darian? No. I thought some people were being very unfair to him, and
professional. That Slap would say.
I hate. Well, no, that's something that always annoys me quite a bit because you know what Darian did. He did something that a lot of people engaged with, a lot of people were interested in, and it's a rain delay.
Well,
what is he supposed to do?
Well, what's funny is that like when we had Blaney on last week. Darian held it up, and Blaney immediately started laughing. He found it funny as hell.
Because here's a little secret: the drivers don't care, or they watch and enjoy the stuff, antics that we or somebody else does,
Well, and the thing is that Blaney and us, we have a few mutual friends. So like we go like it's not like I don't like talk to Ryan Blaney every night or anything,
Right.
or even like at all really. But I mean, I'm friends with some of his close friends, and we just go back and forth talking about stuff. So stuff just gets passed around, and memes just get shared, and it's just funny stuff like that. It's like I feel like, and I don't blame people, because not everybody. There's a very small amount of NASCAR fans who are YouTubers, and even smaller amount of those people who have any sort of, if in quotation, success. And it is a different, like, I won't say a different world, but a different perspective. It's just, you know, you or I will get up and maybe like look at news stories and see, okay, like, should I make a video about this today? Whereas like the average fan goes on there and they're like, oh, cool, this happened, or oh, this
Right.
person's sponsoring. Whereas we're like looking at it more analytical base. Um,
But
I
there
think
are
it,
some people who will go, because I see it all the time, and I've tried to listen to this a little bit better when I see it. Is people will start tagging me like, I hope you make a video about this. But seriously, like people like rely on us sometimes because they're like, and that's kind of what I think is cool, is like
yeah,
people are like, I wonder what David thinks about this, and I'm like, do you really want my opinion on this? But I try to be a crowd pleaser. The other thing you mentioned about Blaney and this kind of weird position we're all kind of finding ourselves in now. I kind of look at it this way. There are some race car drivers who I'd consider friends,
mm-hmm.
but at the same time, a lot of the guys in racing circles or the racing community who I interact with and can text right now if I wanted to. I consider them like acquaintances. You know what I mean? I'm sure you
Yeah,
would consider Blaney an acquaintance. He's somebody you could probably talk to, but you're not going to talk. You're not going to go golfing with him. But
yeah,
you're like, I look at it like we're like work colleagues. You know what I mean? You're not necessarily going to be friends with these people, but you can still have positive relationships and know them and be able to interact with them, because ultimately, we all kind of work in the same environment. We all each kind of, because if we're not talking about them, they're not getting any kind of publicity,
mm-hmm.
and vice versa. So it's a symbiotic circle. You know what I
It's
mean?
like one big machine, and now we've added like another cog into that machine kind of
Exactly.
thing. It's not even. And the thing I tell people is, because I'll say that people be like, oh, you're so full of yourself. I'm like, I never said it was like a huge one by any means. Like like little pieces still can fit into the machine. They don't have to be the most instrumental part. Like
Right.
I know full well. And I've told people this before. I know full well, like, if I just say I fall asleep tonight and I just disappear, just never find me again. Yeah, people will be upset that I'm gone, but the sport of auto racing is going to live on without me. It'll live on one day without you, without Eric, without any of us. It's going to move on. Like, it's like you look at the old guard and people are like, I can't imagine a NASCAR without, Bob Jenkins. Well, how long's it been since Bob Jenkins was a commentator? And I'm not on the same level, just saying that now. But
Right.
he hasn't been a commentator in Cup Series in what, 20 years? The sport moves, it evolves, and it's like I think that's the part that people need to understand, is like that are detractors, is like, I do not think the sport needs me, in the sense that it will it will not survive. Look, Dale
It'll
Earnhardt.
function without you.
Yeah, look at Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt is the most iconic, in my opinion, the most iconic driver in NASCAR history, and
So easy.
easily in the top 5 all time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
go around
Oh
the
yeah.
world, people. Like, you can go to France, you can go to Germany, you can go to Australia. There are people who know who Dale Earnhardt is, even if they don't watch NASCAR. NASCAR has lived on without him. Now, some may say for the worse, but it is still one of the most popular sports leagues in America.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, we got philosophical with this one.
Right. Right.
Let's,
Right. We don't. We
let's,
don't. We
we went
we
way
we,
over the time.
we
Holy
talked for
Jesus.
3 hours.
Let me get these super chats, and I'll.
I hope you guys have been entertained by this. We still got 200 people watching, so I mean,
Well, and the thing is,
did something right.
the IRL show isn't exactly like, it usually is like not this high. because I've told people it's like it's not a BS stream, but it's not a podcast, but it's in the middle somewhere.
Right,
So
right.
it's for each person's taste. But anyway, I'll read a few of these things here. Let's see. I think I think there's only two of them. Bake the
Okay.
Snake, thank you for the $5. Says 250 laps at Bristol dirt is way too much. I agree. And then Royal Stygian, Royal. Your logo looks like the Vikings logo, so I think that's cool. Yo, a fellow Northern Illinois man. I lived like an hour and a half from Rockford. I think it says '07. I think so '07. Cool. That's awesome. it's it's not the greatest city. Let's just put it like that. Well, I mean, like I tell people like they're like, "What's your city known for?" And I don't live actually in Rockford. I live around it, and I just I'll be like, "Cheap Trick." There you go. Sock Monkey. There you go. Those two things are like, what's Rockford good at for now? And I'm like, shootings.
That is something that you just brought up, and I that is something that I have tried ever since I got any kind of notoriety on YouTube. Like, people have a general idea of where I live, but I'm not like saying, "Hey, here's my address," or "Here's a clear shot of my house that I live in," because I'm like, dude, it only takes one crazy, you know, let's just say, for example, some guy with a bull haircut or something, who maybe is like a crazy sim racer or something, finds out where you live. I wouldn't want that to happen. I wouldn't want to be that guy. I don't want to be on that investigation discovery show. Thank you very much. So,
Trust me, I'll tell you some stuff once we go off air from last summer. There's some stuff like I made one thing public at the start of the summer, and that was like the start of my craziness in the summer of 2020, dude. Trust me, I'm moving. I'm moving in the next year or so. So as long as I can stay off anyone's radar that long, I think I'll be happy. The day I moved, they're like, I've been waiting for this day. You really think you're going there? I know another place you're going. Nah, they probably wouldn't. They probably wouldn't have some badass catchphrase. They'd probably be like the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah.
Be like Yucko the Clown or something, just screaming.
Oh, one more thing. Antardas for the 199 says, "I would love to imagine David running NASCAR."
I've always said this about like me actually running racing. It would be a great like 2 months. I would run the costs up so high. Like, we would be right. I would like go back to the Arrow Wars and like I'd be like, all right, we're no holds barred. We're gonna break every track record. We're gonna let the engineers just go crazy. We're gonna go 260 miles an hour at Talladega. It'd be a great 2 months, guys. You guys would be so entertained, and it would be horrible at the same time. I would kill the sport.
We're gonna resurrect Rockingham, North Wilkesboro Air Base,
And we're gonna run 180 miles an hour around Rockingham.
Air Base Speedway. We are gonna resurrect it. And it's like, but it's not there. Well, we're resurrecting it still. What are you gonna use for walls? Trees.
It's a true dirt race. We're actually going to bring rally racing to NASCAR. We're going to have co-drivers. It's going to be the drivers' wives. See, it's going to be great. We're going to get like all the demographics involved in it. So when they both hit the tree, it's going to be you're going to have so much fun with your family. You're going to be like, "Wow, my wife yells at me in the car like that." I don't
We're gonna have it to where we have 40 Cup cars, 40 Xfinity, and 40 truck cars on the Roval all at once.
Oh,
I
would absolutely. I would do a multi-class race immediately. Like, that wouldn't even be a question. I'd be like, dude, we got a 4-mile track. Let's do 100 cars out there at the same time.
Dale Jr. was actually calling for that. He said that the Roval should be a multi-class race and should go for 8 hours. I'm like, what?
8 hours? My god!
He wants he was talking about an endurance road course race with all of the series out there in different classes, and I'm just like, Dale, I love you, buddy, but I draw the line there.
They used to have a 500-mile race at Riverside. 500 miles.
Oh god. Dude.
I would. So if they did a multi-class race and they did like a throwback to like the Riverside 500, I could see that. That would be kind of cool.
It'd be cool, but that'd be a drag, dude. Because you know for a fact that like You
Oh, they do a
know,
stage every 30 minutes.
dude, there'd be yeah. And well, and if you call cautions like that, like how would NASCAR's caution procedures go for restarts? Like, are you gonna restart like Cup, then Xfinity, then them? Or are you just gonna have where they're at the on the track? Like, I feel like
Well, what I
NASCAR would
think
make it.
NASCAR would do is they'd probably split the cars by class. They'd put the Cup cars
Yeah,
ahead of the. I mean,
but
if I was running it, I would rather see it totally sports car style in that the field is mixed up where they threw the yellow, but that
mhm.
could get complicated with pit
So,
stops and stuff. So,
I feel like NASCAR would make it needlessly complicated, like the Bristol qualifying. Like, I feel like
oh
they'd be
yeah,
like, if we have to have the dude from NBC's election night explain to you how our qualifying is or how our caution procedures is, we've went too far. It's like that Bill Maher quote. It's like, if what you're doing sounds like an Onion article, you've went too far.
right.
Like,
Well, the big thing about NASCAR and a lot of the problems that they've kind of self-inflictedly put on themselves is that, to me, I think they've gotten too far away from green flag starts the race, checkered flag ends the
mhm,
race. You know what I mean?
yep.
I honestly think sometimes I'm like, how many boomers turn off the race when Mike Joy gets all excited and calls the stage win like it's the end of the race? I'm like, some people watch this. I guarantee I would love to watch if we had like the YouTube data like we get to watch sometimes where we get to see the live viewers.
Hmm.
I would love to watch like the Fox and watch what happens at a stage and just watch
Yeah.
the viewers just drop
You,
off a cliff.
you know what probably happens is like, so like when we had Blaney on, we peaked at like almost 800, and then right after that it went down to 600. And I'm like, I feel like that's what happens when all the boomers turn it off for the stages, and then they
Right.
turn it back on a few minutes later and then turn it off again. Like, I feel like that's what they do. Like, because it probably is. It's probably like a damn roller coaster. It's like
Well,
just
that's the thing about the Daytona 500 ratings that they always talk about. And really, just about any race, like the big races, like at the end of the race in a normal year when it actually runs at the right time, hashtag noon. It will peak at like 10 million viewers for like the last 10 laps, but
mhm.
it won't. But in the rating, it'll be like 4 million or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And
Uh,
I, yeah,
one last super chat here, and then we probably should because it's
right.
damn.
I need a drink. I'm
Me too,
dried out.
me too, man. So Royal again with the $5 super chat says, "Oh yeah, this one's true, and I'm gonna actually make a video on this soon because I got to have a tour of the Rockford Speedway
Ooh,
with the Deary family. I did not realize that the owner of the track, she's on the NASCAR Hall of Fame voting committee, and she's like really good friends with Richard Petty."
oh man.
Yeah, I'll show you some stuff after we get done, but I took some pictures of like old stuff that they have of Petty's retirement tour, and it was like, damn, I didn't even know that existed. He says Rockford is known for their figure eight trailer race. Dude, it is insanely
Oh
funny.
god.
It is so. Dude,
That sounds like insurance loves that.
my girlfriend and I went down to Danny's house for right after Christmas for the weekend. And literally that night after we went out to eat, we sat and watched figure eight trailer races from the Rockford Speedway. Dude, they have right out of turn two, there's a junkyard of like all the stuff they've used in the past. And it's just, I mean, it looks like it looks like the end of a Talladega race, honestly. I mean, it's what it looks like. There's shit that's like burned on it. They're like, oh yeah, we use this car. This is when we like literally blew up a car with like a bomb, and I'm like, what, huh? Like, I don't know exactly what it was, but they're like, yeah, we did this with this one, and oh, here's a car that we found out we could set on fire if we put this in it. And I'm like, what? This is redneck paradise. But he says he lives 30, not 90 minutes away. Rockford Speedway is a fun little track. See, I'm telling you, man, if they could get like some ARCA series or something, some really legitimate NASCAR series out there that can be televised, it puts on amazing racing. It's it's I think one of, well, now Chicagoland's defunct. It's one of like two operating tracks that NASCAR owns in Illinois. Like, it's
Hmm.
that and Gateway, I think. I think that's what he
Do
said.
they own Gate? I thought Gateway was independent.
It might be now. I mean, the guy that was telling me about it, I mean, he was getting stuff wrong that was like 10 years old. So maybe
Oh,
he
right.
might, it might be the only one that NASCAR, because it's like one of the NASCAR home tracks when they
Yeah.
were pushing that. But yeah, dude, it's fun. Like, if you ever come up this way or whatever, like I know for Road America, um, I'm looking at having a few friends from YouTube stay like if you ever come up this way for a race or whatever, you got to stop by the Speedway on a Saturday night. It is nuts, dude. It is so damn fun. God,
Sounds like a plan to me.
I can feel my voice getting drier and drier.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. Yeah.
All right, we should probably call it. We should call it a night, and then I can actually tell you the really good stuff.
Oh, great. Yeah, my throat is drier than the Bristol race. Going to be about 50 laps into the track.
I thought of a joke I'd say in 2018, but I'll tell you when we're off air.
Oh no. I can guess, by the way, what the chat. Once we go off the air, you should guess what that joke is.
All right, I think we'll go off the air now because we've been on for an extra 75 freaking minutes.
Look at all that free content you guys got. Hope you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, they said it was a damn goal.